Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if the Uzumaki clan finds Naruto council bashing harem part 2. Before I start, please support for more amazing content, and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by King34662 and link in description and support writer. Let's start the video. Naruto's hospital room on January 3, 52 AFK. Naruto sat in his hospital bed looking at the Hokage, who was now staring at Naruto in the eyes. He had just been asked to recall everything that had happened. He sat there quietly for a few minutes before he started talking. Well, I woke up really early in the morning. I felt that something wasn't right and I felt alarm bells ringing. I tried to sense what was going on, and that was when I felt Hinata-chan's chakra moving. He explained to the aged man. Wait, the Hyuga matriarch said as she looked at Naruto. Yugao and Kakashi's apartment is sold 5 miles away from the Hyuga compound. How did you know it was even her? Hitomi asked. Well, I remembered her chakra. Naruto explained as he looked at Hitomi. I can do it right now if you don't believe me. Alright, I want everyone in the room to move around and I want Naruto to close his eyes, Sarutobi said as he got up to walk to a corner of the room. After 2 minutes, he had Naruto point to everyone in the room. Hinata-chan is right there. He pointed to Hinata, blushed when she said his name so affectionately. Hinata's Ka-chan is right there. He pointed to Hitomi. Weird mystery lady is right there. He pointed to Mikoto, whose sweat dropped at the nickname. Gigi is right there. He pointed to Sarutobi, who smiled warmly. And weird mask guy is right there. He pointed to the ceiling. Everyone in the room froze when a masked ANB with a blank mask materialized in a position to kill Naruto, but was stopped by Sarutobi. The Hokage drew a kunai and threw it. The knife landed in the root member's skull. Luckily, Hinata had her eyes covered by her mother when the mystery figure appeared and Mikoto was getting in the stance for a sealless fire justice. Sarutobi looked at Naruto and was shocked to see that he looked perfectly normal. Sorry about that, we have to take out the trash, he said as he signaled for 2 actual ANBU members to come to take away the body. It's okay, Gigi. Naruto smiled at the man who just killed someone in front of him. Naruto, aren't you a little scared about what you just saw? Mikoto asked the child, who shook his head. Nah, when you've seen a giant tiger rip the head off of 3 small baby boars because of land disputes, you learn to live with death and blood, Naruto explained, which surprisingly got a nod from Hiruzen. I understand, Naruto, though it is a little worrying that you're so used to seeing killings and blood for someone your age. I understand, Gigi, Naruto replied, albeit a little quieter. Anyway, when I sensed that Hinata-chan was in danger, I quietly grabbed Nei-chan's pouches and ran to Hinata. After I got there, I stopped the guy who then threw stuff at me. Where did you learn how to dodge, Naruto? Sarutobi asked after he silently put up a silencing barrier. Well, some of the monkeys and foxes in the forest would throw stuff at me for fun. If I dodged them, I got fruit. If I didn't, well, they would dunk me in the lake, Naruto said as he shivered thinking about all the times he got dunked in the lake. How did you get them to do this? Mikoto asked with a raised eyebrow. Well, I talked to them, Naruto replied like it was the simplest thing in the world. You talked to them? Hitomi asked with just as much skepticism as Mikoto had. Naruto, you can tell them about your mother, Sarutobi said, which made Naruto's head turn dangerously towards the old man. How do you know about her? Naruto asked the man. Meanwhile, inside Naruto's head, Akari would also like to know how the old man knew she was talking to him. Must have been Kakashi and Yugao, she figured as she continued to watch how the scene would play out. Your siblings told me about her, he said with a kind smile. Alright, well, I have a giant fox that lives in my tummy, Naruto blurted out, which made Mikoto and Hitomi's eyes widen in fear. So you know about the fox? Hitomi asked Naruto, who shook his head in an affirmative manner. Yeah, she's really nice and talks to me all the time. Except for right now. What do you mean, Naruto? I'm just listening to what's going on, she said with a smile on her face as she poked Mito to say something. Yes, it is quite interesting to hear this conversation, Guppy, the elder Uzumaki said with a smile. On the outside, Naruto's face scrunched up in confusion as he heard the new voice in his head. Who are you? He asked the new voice in his head, and who laughed in return. Who, me? Well, I am your distant relative, she said as she didn't want to give away her relationship to the boy until he figured out who his parents were. Naruto-kun, everything okay? Sarutobi asked the boy, who nodded his head. Oh yeah, everything is fine. Ka-chan was just talking to me about something, Naruto explained to the man who nodded his head. Wait, you have a giant fox in your head? Hinata asked, which made all the adults' eyes widen. Yeah, well, I think she said that she's actually in a seal on my tummy, Naruto explained as he lifted up his shirt to show Hinata the seal. She walked over and poked it, which made Naruto giggle. Wait, if there's a giant fox in there, how does it fit? Hinata asked, which made all the adults' sweat drop. I don't know, Naruto replied with a shrug of his shoulders. So you don't dislike Naruto because he has a giant fox in his tummy? Sarutobi hesitantly asked the small child, who shook her head. Naruto-kun is my first friend, she said happily. I'm not giving that up because he has a fox Ka-chan that lives in his tummy and talks in his head, Hinata said with a smile on her face which made everyone else smile as well. Naruto seal. Mito looked over at Akari, who was whipping a tear from her eye. She smiled at the sight and leaned over to hug her. That was really special, wasn't it, Akari-chan? Yeah, she said as she sniffles a little. It really was. Is she? Mito looked at Akari, who nodded her head. She's his other half. He can't tell, but her chakrak is synced in perfect harmony with his. She explained to the Uzumaki, who smiled. Just like me and Hashikun, she whispered. Yeah, Kami said as she thought about a certain white-haired supreme goddess. Naruto's hospital room. All the adults looked at Hinata with wide smiles that were full of pride. Hitomi grabbed her daughter and hugged her tightly. Mikoto looked at Naruto, who was a little jealous of the affection, and went to give him a hug as well. After a few minutes of hugging, Naruto continued with his story of how the night offered. He talked about how he talked to the ninja and how they both launched attacks at the other. Wait, how many jutsu do you know? Mikoto asked the boy, who sheepishly scratched the back of his head. He then went on to explain all the jutsu that he knew, which brought wide eyes to both Mikoto and Hitomi. Sarutobi already knew all this information, so he didn't show any reaction. After that small setback, Naruto continued with his fight with the Kumo Chunin. He explained how he walked on the walls to avoid getting hit by lightning, how he set up an earth wall so that he could get Hinata out of the bag, and finally how he used shadow clones so that he could make a combination attack with his wind and 2 fire jutsu. Thank you, Naruto-kun, that makes all of this a lot easier for me to deal with, Sarutobi said with a smile on his face. Now can you answer my questions? Naruto asked the man, who nodded his head. Cool, who is she? He points to Mikoto, who smiles brightly. Naruto-chan, my name is Mikoto Uchiha. I will be training you for the time being when you aren't with the Hyugas or your siblings, she said warmly as she wrapped Naruto into another hug. His head was right where he wanted it to be, right in the middle of the Uchiha's chest. After a few moments of pure bliss for the boy, Mikoto let him go and went to sit down in her chair. She then smiled at him and went to ask him some questions of her own. Now Naruto-chan, have you noticed anything different with your eyes recently? She asked the boy, who nodded his head. Hi, I can see in the dark, and I can see really clearly, and I can see really far too. He explained, which made Hitomi curious. Hokage-san, could this be a byproduct of Naruto being a Jinchuriki? She tried to ask the man quietly, but Naruto still heard it. Gigi, what's a Jinsurike? The boy asked, which made everyone in the room sweat drop. You mean a Jinchuriki, Naruto? The literal definition of the word means human sacrifice, but really what it means is that you house what is a tailed beast, which are better known as demons. You house the 9-tailed demon fox, which is known to be the strongest of the 9-tailed beasts. Sarutobi explained. Naruto, I want you to know that what the old man is true, but also that we aren't demons, we are spirits and are greatly misunderstood, Akari said in a soft voice in his mind. I know, Kaa-chan, you're a nice person and I'm gonna make people change their minds about you. Hinata-chan doesn't mind you. You'll see, I'm gonna do it, I promise, and I've never broken a promise yet. Naruto thought in his head, which made Akari smile brightly. Thank you, Naruto. Naruto smiled as he felt his mother's warmth spread through his body. He hugged his body and nuzzled his head into his chest. Naruto, are you okay? Sarutobi asked cautiously. He didn't know how the child would react to being told this information. What? Oh, I'm perfectly fine, he said with a smile on his face. What about you, Hinata? Hitomi asked the girl, who shrugged her shoulders. Naruto-kun saved me from meanings. He's not a demon. And I don't think his Kaa-chan is one either. People are just mean, Hinata said, which once again made everyone smile. Alright, well, back to the topic we were originally talking about. Naruto-kun, your eyes, did you notice anything different about them? Mikoto asked the child, who shook his head with a frown on his face. No, I mean things got slower and turned black and white, but other than that nothing, Naruto explained, which made Mikoto smile. That's exactly what I was looking for. Do you think you could try to make the same thing happen again? She asked the child, which made him shrug his shoulders. That's okay, I'm gonna help you. All you have to do is channel chakra into your eyes. Okay, sounds pretty easy. Naruto did as he was told and found that his vision became slightly slower, but this time he could see in full color, though now he could see that there were small balls of fire in everyone's stomachs. Wow, this is really cool. Everyone looked at Naruto's Sharingan and noticed that it was 1 tome in his right eye and 2 in his left. Mikoto and Hinata were in awe of the boy's eyes, and Sarutobi smiled fondly. Wow, Kaa-chan, can I do that? Hinata asked her mother, who smiled but shook her head. I'm sorry, sweetie, but even if you tried, I don't think it would work. You only unlocked your chakra yesterday. Hitomi said to her daughter, who looked down in disappointment. You have to let her at least try, Naruto said as he looked at how much chakra Hinata had. She actually had a lot for her age. She had about 2/3 what Naruto had. Alright, I guess we can try, Hitomi sighed as she sat down in front of her daughter. All you have to do is 6 hand signs. They are rat, dog, lightning, rat and ram, she said as she demonstrated them. After that, all you have to do is channel chakra to your eyes and say Byakugan. You are very young, Hinata, and even prodigies don't unlock these eyes at the age of 4, she explained. Hinata looked at her mother, and then at Naruto. She saw him smile at her, and hold his thumb up. You can do it, Hinata-chan, he yelled as he smiled at her. I believe in you. I can do this. Naruto-kun believes in me. I can't let him down, she thought to herself as she slowly did the hand signs. Once she finished the hand signs, she took a deep breath and shouted at the top of her lungs, Byakugan. 1. Suddenly veins started protruding on her face, and her eyes looked slightly different. Hinata looked around and noticed that she could see almost 360 degrees. She smiled to herself as she almost fell down due to exhaustion. I did it, she said as she leaned on Naruto's bed for support. Yeah, Naruto said as he looked at her and smiled. You did great. Hitomi was speechless. Never before in the history of her entire clan had she heard of someone unlocking the Byakugan before at the age of 4. Not only that, but she could do it on her first try. She didn't know what to do. If she told Hayashi, she would be starting training immediately, and wouldn't be able to have a normal childhood. Sarutobi was equally amazed. He has been alive for a long time. He was 71 years old, and had seen a lot. Never would he have ever imagined that he would be in the same room as someone who unlocked the Sharingan, but also the Byakugan, both of them being children and both of them not even in the academy. Well, we definitely have some talented children in our midst, he thought to himself as he glanced at Mikoto, who looked like she was about to faint. Well, that was unexpected, the aged man finally said with a chuckle. This could be huge for the village. Both parents looked at the man like he was insane. Mikoto instantly moved to Naruto's side and placed his head close to her chest. Hitomi immediately put Hinata behind her and glared at the man. And what do you mean by that? Mikoto asked through a clenched jaw. Well, what I mean is that we have 2 very young and very powerful ninjas in our midst, he said cryptically. Cut the shit, what do you really mean? Hitomi asked as she then activated her Byakugan. Mikoto wasn't too far behind as she also activated her Sharingan. Sarutobi sighed and sat back down in his chair. He rubbed his face into his palms and groaned. The village is being seen as weak throughout the elemental nations. Okay, but what does that have anything to do with Naruto and Hinata? Mikoto asked as she pulled a stool over to Naruto's bedside as he was very content with staying in her bosom. Alright, IWA and Kumo are getting antsy. We just lost the Yondaime, Red Death, too, a quarter of our ANBU and Elite Jounin, and we haven't had any of our genin reach the final rounds of the past 5 Chunin exams, he said in a grave tone. Like I said, what does that have anything to do with these children? Mikoto asked again. Her Sharingan spinning dangerously fast. We need to look strong, we need to avoid another war. If we got into another war, he purposely trailed off his thoughts so that the 2 mothers could understand what he was saying. You're saying that you want them to become shinobi so that you can increase the village's standing? Hitomi asked the man who nodded his head slowly. Are you out of your kami-forsaken mind? Mikoto yelled, which made everyone wince a little. Hey, if you want to take this damn hat from me then by all means. Sarutobi fired back at the Uchiha, who shut her mouth but still glared at him. We don't have any other choice. We can't go to war or else we will all die. I can't let that happen. Those 2 could very well be our only hopes. He yelled as he rubbed his temples with his index fingers. I'll fight. Everyone in the room looked at Naruto like he had 5 heads. He had turned off his Sharingan to conserve energy, and was now looking at the 3 adults with a serious expression on his face. Naruto-chan, I don't think you know what we're talking about, Hitomi said in as calm a voice she could muster at the moment. Alright, let's see if I understand. These other villages think that our village is weak, kind of like a group of foxes without a mother, the other villages being coyotes or wolves. The wolves think that the foxes are weak, and so they are going to kill them, but if strong fox babies appear, it will make the wolves and coyotes think that the rest of the foxes' kids are strong, so they will get scared and leave. Is that what's going on right now? He asked the now wide-eyed adults. His tactical thinking and analytical skills are amazing. He's 4 and did a better job than most of our genin or chunin could ever do, Sarutobi thought to himself as he looked at his grandson. Yes, that's exactly what's going on. Alright, well, when I was in that forest, the number 1 thing the foxes taught me was to never abandon your pack. The village may hate me, but I can't abandon them. They are like my pack. So I'll train. I'll train and train till I can protect them. I'll protect them all, and I'll protect Hinata-chan. I won't abandon my own. I won't abandon my friends, and I won't abandon this village, Naruto said with determination and fire that was unheard of in a 4-year-old. He looked at Sarutobi with a fire in his eyes that burned bright with grit and willpower. If Naruto-kun is doing it, then so am I, Hinata said as she scooted from behind her mother. Ka-chan told me to never ditch your friends. Naruto-kun is my only friend and I'm not going to leave him. I'll train with him. I'll learn with him. We do this together. No matter what, the young, usually timid girl shouted. She too had a fire in her eyes that showed how serious she was. Hinata-chan, you didn't stutter. 3, Naruto said with a big smile on his face. Hinata immediately started blushing and pushing her fingers together. She looked at her friend and smiled at him. Both grinned at each other and looked at Sarutobi, who was now looking at Hitomi and Mikoto. After 10 minutes of tense silence, Hitomi signed to herself and rubbed her face. Say we did agree to this, how long would we have to get them to genin level? She asked the aged man. Since it's January now, the next exams are in Suna in March. They definitely wouldn't be ready by then. The exams after that are being held in Kiri in August. That gives you both 8 months to get them to Chunin level. Sarutobi explained to the 2 women. 8 months? Both Hitomi and Mikoto yelled at the man who sighed. Naruto, how many clones can you make? Sarutobi asked the child, who looked at him funny. Tell him 250, Akari said to the child in his head. She said I could make around 250, he replied, which made everyone in the room's eyes widen. Tell them that I can also sense Hinata's chakra density, and that she can make 165 clones. She said to the boy. Kaa-chan said that Hinata-chan could make 165 clones due to how naturally denser her chakra is. Hitomi was shocked that her daughter could make so many. It was a little-known fact about the shadow clone jutsu, but it didn't matter how much chakra you had. It was a matter of how dense it was. The denser the chakra, the more close you could make with the same amount of chakra. 4. Wow, I can only make like 3 or 4, Hitomi said in shock at the revelation. I can make maybe 5 at the maximum, Mikoto chimed in as she looked at the pair. I can make 25, but then I need to go to the hospital. To think that these two have that dense chakra at such a young age is incredible. The last people I knew that had this dense chakra were Hashirama-sama and Mito-sama. Sarutobi explained to the occupants of the room. Well, if you take into consideration that the caster gains everything that the clone learns and experiences, we could actually get them both the Chunin in 8 months, Mikoto said as she looked at Naruto with a smirk. So are you both going to do it? Sarutobi asked with a face of pure hope. Hitomi sighed to herself and groaned. Yes, I'll train Hinata and I'll help train Naruto as well. We will follow the schedule that we came up with. Perfect. I can have them take the Genin exams in 5 months. And since Yugao and Kakashi aren't here, it would usually be the Haiga who take care of Naruto, but Yugao said that Mikoto could stay in the guest room with Naruto. Sarutobi said. Both Hitomi and Mikoto nodded their heads and bowed. Hitomi thanked the Hokage for letting her see Naruto and told Hinata to say her goodbyes. Both hugged each other, and then the Hyugas left the hospital room. While all this was happening, Hiruzen was thinking to himself about the training that Naruto and Hinata were going to undertake. I need to make it up to Naruto, but how? He has his clones, that's it. I'll take a few of his clones and teach him how to be Hokage. I'll teach him politics and the importance of how to run the village. I can even make him my apprentice and teach him everything I know. After what I heard today, he'll make a fantastic Hokage. The will of fire burns bright in him. Hokage-sama, is there anything else you need to talk to us about? Mikoto asked the aged man, who was seemingly lost in thought. Yes, there was one thing. He walked over to Naruto and sat on his bed. Naruto, I have a proposition for you. Okay, Naruto looked at the man and he smiled at him. Do you know what the will of fire is? Sarutobi asked the child. No, what is it, Gigi? The will of fire is the belief that the entire village is a family. It means that everyone is connected like a tree. The villagers are the leaves, the shinobi are the bark, and the Hokage is the trunk. The Hokage is in charge of the village and has to make sure that everyone is safe. From the villagers to the shinobi, they make sure that from the smallest leaf to the thickest piece of bark is protected. He explained to the child, who was looking at him with wide eyes. Wow, I want to be the trunk. I want to be Hokage, Naruto said with a wide smile on his face. Mikoto was looking at Naruto, and remembering another blonde child, she remembered saying those exact same words. She could swear that she saw an overlay of Minato on top of Naruto as he said those words. Wherever you are, Minato-kun, you would be so proud of him, she thought to herself, and she whipped a tear from her eyes. I'm glad you want to be Hokage, Naruto. But there's a lot you need to know if you want to be Hokage. That's why I'm asking if you would like to become my apprentice? Mikoto's eyes widened as she heard the request from Sarutobi. She knew that if Naruto became the Hokage's apprentice, that he would basically be grooming the child for the hat. She didn't know whether to be happy about that or to wonder what Sarutobi saw in him. Sure, he had potential. Mountains of potential, but to groom him when he's 4? She didn't know. So she watched how the scene was going to play out. Is that like your student? Naruto asked with wide eyes. Yes, I would teach you the ins and outs of Konoha's laws, the shinobi world, the nations, and how to be Hokage. He explained to the child. I see. So he's not going to teach him jutsus or fighting. He's just going to teach him politics and leave the heavy stuff to me, Kakashi, and Yugao. Mikoto thought to herself as she watched Naruto accept the offer. Sarutobi was overjoyed that he was going to get a student like Naruto. He saw the fire in his eyes that day and knew that he was Hokage material. Now all he had to do was teach him and train him. Well, Naruto, I've kept you here long enough. The doctor said that you could leave as soon as you woke up, Hiruzen said as he watched the boy hop out of his hospital bed. All right, Naruto-chan, let's get you home and ready for bed. You've had a very long day and I can tell you're tired, Mikoto said in a sweet voice as she picked up the now half-asleep Naruto. She looked at the Hokage, who smiled at her, and then shined back to Kakashi and Yugao's apartment. She made them both sandwiches for dinner and sent Naruto off to bed. After a few hours of reading, she walked to the guest room to see Naruto fast asleep. She changed into sleep clothing that she had brought with her in a scroll and sank into the bed. Naruto instinctively went and cuddled up to her chest, and she smiled. You, Naruto, she whispered as she stroked his head. You are going to be a legend one day. She kissed his forehead and went to sleep. Little did she know that her prediction could one day come true. Yugao and Kakashi's apartment on January 4, 52 AFK. It was dark when Naruto woke up. He looked around and it was dark outside. He also felt that his arms were wrapped around him, and he heard a heart beating. Is someone holding me? He looked down, and saw that it was that same lady from the day before. Wait, he remembered that she was named Mikoto, and that she would be training him. He then took the opportunity to look around. His brain was telling him that it was early morning, but he found that he could see perfectly in the dark environment he was in. He then tried to channel chakra to his eyes and found that they now had an eerie red glow. Naruto turned to find a mirror, and saw his eyes and smiled. They had one spinning tome in the right eye and two in his left. He got up and walked closer and smiled. This is so cool. After a few minutes of looking at his eyes, he decided that it was time for him to get up fully. He looked around and found the door. Not wanting to wake up Mikoto, he silently crept around the room and exited it. I need to get clean, but there isn't a stream nearby. So what am I supposed to do? He asked himself quietly as he stood in the middle of the hallway. Well, you need to take a bath, Guppy. Naruto, who by this point wasn't startled by the voices in his head, just stood there confused. I'm sorry. Do I know you? He asked the voice. Oh, that's right. I don't think I've properly introduced myself yet. My name is Mito Uzumaki. I am your great ancestor from many years ago, the elder clan had said, albeit vaguely. So you're like my Bachan? He asked the now identified Mito, who was smiling in his head. Mito, who hadn't heard someone call her that in many years, was absolutely beaming. I'm technically his great-grandmother, but I don't think he's going to be meeting Tsunade anytime soon, so I'll take the title. Mito thought was an evil smirk. Yes, you may call me Bachan, she said to the young boy. Alright, is Ka-chan still asleep? He asked as he found the bathroom and walked in. He looked around the bathroom and found an orange towel and washcloth. Yes, my Guppy, and I can help you learn how to properly wash yourself, she said in a smooth voice. Okay, he said as he closed the door. After 35 minutes, and a very interesting conversion with his new grandmother figure, Naruto was clean, had his teeth brushed, and even learned how to clean the bathroom. He found out that he now loved taking hot bubble baths, but he didn't enjoy the tediousness of having to use the shower to rinse himself off afterward. Mito explained to him the importance of proper hygiene, and what happens if it's kept at an adequate level. Wow, I had to shower with Tsuchan when she was this age. The fact that he can do it by himself is incredible, she thought to herself as she made a cup of coffee in the seal. Once Naruto dried himself off with the towel that was hanging on the rack, he walked back to what he assumed was his room since it was painted orange. He looked at his bed and found Mikoto still asleep. He then looked at the digital clock on the wall that read 5:30 a.m. Wow, I guess this is the time I woke up in the cave, he thought to himself as he tried to find some clothing. He eventually found a pair of black pants and a red shirt with a spiral on it. He looked at himself in the mirror and smiled. He then took one last look at Mikoto, who was still asleep, and then left the room to make breakfast. Mikoto woke up slowly. She looked around and found that he was in an unfamiliar palace. She sat up on the bed and realized that she was in Naruto's bedroom. However, she immediately realized that one thing was missing, Naruto. She immediately kicked off the blanket and sheets and ran out of the room. Naruto? She asked as she made her way down the hallway. She then smelled something coming from the kitchen and realized that he was cooking breakfast. Wait, he knows how to cook? She asked herself as she saw the small boy using a clone as a step stool. I need you to stay still, he yelled as he stood up to flip something in a pan. You try being a step stool. The clone yelled back as it looked down at the wood floor. I didn't want to be a stool, so that's why I made you, Naruto yelled back. Mikoto would have laughed at the funny conversation that the boy was having with his clone if it weren't for the fact that he was cooking food on a stove while standing on another person. She quickly ran to the stove to look at what he was doing and was shocked at what she found. Naruto was cooking sunny-side-up eggs on one side of a skillet and strips of what she assumed was bacon on the other side. How the fuck can he do that? She internally thought. Good morning, Naruto said to Mikoto, who looked at him with a smile. I thought I could cook breakfast for you, he said as he moved the bacon so it wouldn't burn. Mikoto, who was still in shock, simply nodded her head and went to sit at the table. After a few minutes, Naruto asked for some help. She quickly went over to see what he asked. Do you know where the plates are? I'm very small, so I can't reach the other high places, he explained to the mother, who nodded her head. Sure, sweetie, she said with a smile as she started opening cabinets. After a few minutes of searching, she pulled out 2 plates and set them down on the counter. Would you like me to help you put the food on the plates? She asked. While Mikoto was a mother, she didn't get to help her children as often as she liked. Naruto, who sensed the slight emotional change in Mikoto, looked at her strangely for a second. He then shrugged his shoulders and nodded his head. At this action, he felt her chakra ease back to normal and smiled. Mikoto then placed the bacon and eggs on the plates and moved them to the table. She then realized that it was dark in the room and went to turn on the lights. How can he see like this? I had to strain to see what I was doing, she wondered to herself. Naruto then sat down and waited for Mikoto to join him. When she did, he immediately started to eat but was stopped by Mikoto's harsh glare. He looked at her confused and tilted his head. What's wrong? He asked the older women. Well, there are a few things. First, you didn't give thanks for the food. Second, you are eating way too fast. She explained to the boy. Oh, he said quietly. I'm sorry, he tilted his head down. It's okay, sweetie. No one was there to teach you. Makoto said kindly. I'm glad I can still mother someone. Doesn't look like I'm having any more kids anytime soon. She somberly thought to herself. What's wrong? Makoto snapped out of her thoughts when she heard the boy ask her that. She then steeled her emotions and smiled at him. Nothing is wrong, sweetie, she said with a smile. Guppy, don't push her on this. If her husband is who I think he is, then he's not that nice. Just say okay and eat, Mito said to the child, who internally nodded his head. Oh, I thought that you were sad for a second, but I was mistaken, Naruto explained as he sheepishly rubbed the back of his head. Wow, I slipped for a second and he caught me red-handed. He is a fantastic censor. I need to watch myself around him. Though it would be nice to talk to an unbiased source, she thought to herself as she remembered what she was going to be doing. Alright, Naruto-kun, before you eat every meal you have, you always want to give thanks. She explained to the boy, who looked at her with his undivided attention. First you have to put your hands together in front of you. She explained the action, while doing it so that Naruto could mimic it. Then you bow your head, close your eyes, and say Itadakimasu, she said as she did what she said. Itadakimasu, he said with a wide smile on his face. Itadakimasu, she said as she opened her eyes and started to eat the food that Naruto cooked. After a few minutes, she decided to try and get to know her godson. So, who taught you how to cook? She asked the child. Well, when I was in my cave I had to eat. So Ka-chan taught me how to hunt and cook. He explained, which made Makoto's eyes widen. Ka-chan would wake me up every morning at daybreak and we would hunt for food. Sometimes I had leftover meat from the night before, but usually, I just got fresh meat and eggs, he said in between bites. How did you learn to cook eggs? I didn't think there were many ways to get them in the forest of death. She asked the child, who smiled at her. Well, there aren't any. Or at least not chicken. It's chicken honey, Makoto corrected him with a giggle. Well, I had to ask around a bunch of snakes and birds. I only got 2 a day from like 20 birds and snakes. They said that I had to bring them food and protect their nests and burrows. Even then I ate them rarely. I've only had them like 20 times in a year. Naruto explained to Makoto, who nodded her head. You can talk to animals? She asked the boy, who nodded his head. Yeah. Ka-chan wanted me to be able to talk to them. I can talk to everyone, though the bigger animals don't like to say much, he said with a slight frown. What animals have you talked to? She asked as she took another bite. Well, a lot of snakes and birds, foxes, deer, a llama, a tiger, a lion and his family, and some others. Most of the bigger animals only wanted to explain what territory was there, and where I could and couldn't hurt. There were areas in the forest where I could eat what I hunted and areas I couldn't hunt because they had staked their claim already. He said to the woman, who nodded her head. Sometimes the foxes and deer brought me their kids so that I could play with them. I even babysit for food. Really? Makoto asked, intrigued that animals would trust their young with a 4-year-old. Yeah, do you want to meet some of the foxes? He asked with stares in his eyes. This caught Makoto's attention. She raised an eyebrow and looked at the boy with intrigue written on her face. Does he have a summons? She asked herself. Sure, I want to meet them, she said with enthusiasm. Okay. He jumped from his chair and went to the middle of the floor. He then bit his thumb, went through 5 hand signs landings on the ram sign, and slammed his hand on the ground. Summoning Jutsu, Kitsune. Suddenly a large poof was heard and smoke appeared in the room. When the smoke lifted, there was a small orange fox with white tips on his ears. He looked around and looked at Naruto, confused. This isn't the cave, he said to the boy, who shook his head. Nope, this is my new house. Well, it's an apartment, but I live here now, Danny. Naruto shouted with a wide smile on his face. Huh, it looked nice, Nai-chan, but who's the lady? She looks nice, the young fox asked as he went up to sniff Makoto. I'm Makoto and I'm Naruto's godmother. I am also going to be training him, she said to the fox, who yipped. Okay, though you might want to talk to Ka-chan, she wants to see when you are free to babysit. Also, some of the other foxes also want to know when you can babysit. 1. Danny told both Makoto and Naruto, who nodded their heads. I understand, being a mother myself, I sometimes have to have a babysitter come to watch my kids, she said with an understanding smile. Wait, I thought Naruto was your kid? Danny asked, which made Naruto blush. No, Makoto said with her own blush on her face. Though I wish he were. He's so nice and cute. He's my godson, which means that if something happens to his parents or guardians, I take care of him, she explained to the fox, who nodded its head again. Oh, okay, so his guardians aren't here? He asked, to which Makoto nodded her head. They are out on a mission, so I'm here to train little Naruto here, she said with a smile. Okay. Have fun, dude. Summon Ka-chan at some point. Like I said, she wants to see when you can babysit so she can tell the rest of the clan. See you later, Ni-chan. With that, Danny puffed back home and left a cloud of smoke in his absence. Wow, so you babysit for the foxes and the kitsunes? Makoto asked the boy with surprise on her face. Yup. They have a lot of meetings and kids, so the parents bring them here and I watch them while I train with Ka-chan. Sometimes we go to the lake to have fun in the water, Naruto explained as he put his now totally finished breakfast plate in the sink. Interesting, so he's responsible enough to not only have a summon contract, but they even let him watch their kids. Naruto, you are not your average child, she thought to herself as she did the dishes. After 20 minutes, they were ready to head to a training ground to start training. Mikoto has changed into a black shirt and leggings. 2. She slipped on her open-toed shoes and walked with Naruto to training ground 23. Alright Naruto, we are going to start your training, she said, which got a smile out of the boy. Alright Dadabayo. He yelled as he made Mikoto giggle a little bit. Yes, but first we have to warm up and stretch, she said as she spread her legs shoulder-length apart. Naruto mimicked this motion and began to stretch his legs and hips. They went through all kinds of different stretches and even some yoga poses. Naruto was naturally really flexible thanks to his training with Akari for a year. After 20 minutes of stretches, Mikoto sent him off to start running around the training ground. She figured that since all training grounds were 1 square mile in size, she could have him run around it 4 times. Thinking that he was a normal child, he would be done by mid-morning. Naruto, however, had other plans. Since Akari has been training his body for a year, he was a very fit 4-year-old. He was used to running large distances at one time and was able to complete the 4-mile run in a little over 50 minutes. This made Mikoto's eyes widen. He just ran 4 miles in under an hour. That's like 4 11 or 12-minute miles. Holy shit, Kyubi, what have you been training him for? She thought as she looked at a not even winded Naruto. Was that it? He asked the woman, who was now even more in shock. He's asking for more? She then smirked as she remembered some of the notes that Minato left for her. She dug in her bag and found a brush and ink. Lay on your back and take off your shirt, sweetie. Naruto did as he was told, and Mikoto went to apply the resistance and gravity seals to the boy. She figured that since his chakra was already activated, and he was getting a healthy diet, nothing bad would happen to him. I need to apply these to Hinata as well. We can't let him get too ahead of her, she thought as she applied the seals. After a few minutes of concentration, Mikoto had finished applying the seals to Naruto. She looked them over and said "Fuin." Suddenly all the black squiggles and kanji on Naruto started to glow, and after a few seconds, they stopped and faded. Wow, this is weird. I feel really heavy all of the sudden, he said as he stood up to test his movements. That's because I applied seals to make you feel heavier. They will make you faster and stronger, Mikoto explained to the child, who nodded his head. I wonder if I'll learn how to do that, he asked himself as he got ready to continue training. Yes, my little guppy, I was the greatest seal master in the world when I was alive. I will teach you everything I know, Mito said with a large smile on her face. She was looking forward to teaching Naruto sealing because she knew that he would take to it like a fish taking to water. Okay, Ba-chan. Oh, is Ka-chan awake yet? He asked his grandmother, who replied with a negative. No, she is not, though I would let her sleep in for a while. I don't think she's gotten a good night's sleep in a few days, she explained, which made Naruto nod his head in acceptance of the answer. Okay, I'm sure she'll tell me when she will wake up, he said as he continued to test how well his limbs moved with the seals. Alright Naruto, we're going to have a spar, but first I want you to make your clones. I'm going to assign them tasks for them to complete, Mikoto said with a smile. Naruto then went to create 250 clones of himself. Mikoto separated 5 for Sarutobi since he knew that he wanted to train with Naruto. She then sent 5 to the library to start reading books on tactics and cooking. She made 40 of them do the tree walking exercise, another 40 do the leaf balancing exercise, and 40 do water walking. She then brought out 5 different scrolls and placed them on the ground. Alright, I have here 5 different scrolls that contain elemental jutsu. I want 5 groups of 24 clones for each scroll. This will be our morning routine for the next 6 months. After that, we will be doing training exercises with Hinata to build up your teamwork, Mikoto explained to Naruto, who nodded his head. You heard her, boys. I want 1 clone to be in charge of the groups to keep them on track. Naruto shouted to his clones, who shouted hi. 1 clone from each group grabbed a scroll and went to different parts of the training ground. Once all the clones were divided out, Naruto looked at Mikoto, who was smiling at him. Now it's time for our spar, she said as she took off her shirt, which revealed a red and black sports bra. What taijutsu do you know? It's okay if you don't know any, she asked. Guppy, your Ka-chan left me with some instructions as to what to tell her. She said that your taijutsu style is the flying fox style and that you know half the katas for it. She also asks that your teacher teaches you the intercept fist and the hummingbird style. Mito read from a paper in front of her on the couch in the seal. Okay, Ba-chan, Naruto said in his head. Mikoto Ka-chan said that my taijutsu style was the flying fox style. She also asked for you to teach me the intercept first and hummingbird styles, Naruto said to his new mother figure. Mikoto was speechless at what Naruto just said. He had just called her Ka-chan, albeit in a strange way. She was over the moon to have someone call her that again. Itachi was always training or with his father, and Sasuke, he wanted nothing to do with her. He favored hanging out with the cooler Uchihas that lived in the compound. 3. She was over the moon to have Naruto call her that, though she was a little worried about the fact that he called her it so fast. He must have attachment issues, though it does make sense with the neglect that he experienced. 4. I need to make sure he's okay. Maybe a trip to Inochi won't be so bad. She thought to herself as she then thought about the other things he said. So the intercept fist, no doubt that's for the Sharingan, but why the hummingbird? From what I can tell, his body isn't the right build for it. Then again, he is built like a more toned Minato. She stroked her chin in thought and smiled. Alright, it looks like we have our work cut out for us. Hi! Naruto yelled as he ran at Mikoto to start their spar. Hokage Tower, Mayumi Tatsumi was having a good morning. Her husband had given her a nice breakfast, she was able to get to work on time, and even got a smile from the Hokage when she went to give him his favorite item in the world, paperwork. She was sitting at her desk reading the latest issue of Shinobi Weekly when she heard a commotion coming from the hallway. She looked at the schedule for the Hokage and saw that there wasn't anyone supposed to meet with the man until lunch. What could be going on? She thought to herself as she prepared for whatever was going to be coming her way in the next few minutes. And come it did, in the form of 5 hyperactive 4-year-olds. They all looked the same and were wearing the same clothing. She blinked a few times when they all waited at her desk. After a few seconds passed, she asked the question that was burning in her mind. Naruto-kun, why are there 5 of you? She asked the small child who grinned at her. Mayumi had known Norat since he was a baby and was one of the few people who knew where he was for a year. Mayumi-chan, I'm Gigi's apprentice. The child said with a big smile on his face. Sweetie, you mean apprentice, and that's awesome. If you want to go in, he's at his desk doing paperwork. She said to the child, who nodded his head and ran into the room. Ji. All 5 Narutos said at the top of their lungs as they entered the office. It was a small round room that had 2 doors and a closet. There were 3 large bookshelves on both sides of the room. They were stuffed with books and scrolls. There were a few chairs in front of the large wooden desk in the front of the room. Behind the desk was a large glass window that showed the Konoha skyline. At the back of the room were 4 large portraits. The first one was a man with brown hair and tan skin who was wearing red armor. The second picture was of a man wearing blue armor and a gray face protector. He had red markings on his pale face and had red eyes with gray hair. The third picture was of a younger Sarutobi, so Naruto didn't spend much time on it. The fourth picture was of a man who looked strangely like Naruto. He had bright spiky yellow hair, blue eyes, and tan skin. Sarutobi looked up from his paperwork and nearly yelped when he saw 5 Narutos in his office. He then remembered that the boy was now his apprentice, and that he was going to be here every day. Naruto, my boy, how are you doing? He asked the small child who was now looking around the room. I'm good. Mikoto-chan told me to come here with my clones. He explained as he walked around the room. He then stopped at the photos and looked at them. Hey Gigi, who are these guys? The second one looks really cool, he said to the aged leader, who laughed at the statement. Inside of his head, however, Mito was cackling like a hyena. Ha 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 ha, he likes Tobirama-kun more than Hashirama-kun. Ha 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 ha. She laughed, which made Naruto internally sweat drop. These Naruto are the previous Hokage. The first one is Hashirama Senju. He founded the village with his friend Madara, but they got into a fight and Madara had to leave. He died during the first Great Ninja War. The second one is Tobirama Senju. He was Hashirama's younger brother and was the second Hokage. He created things like the academy, taxes, hundreds of jutsus, built the stadium, and created many of the laws in the village today. What made all this more impressive was that he did this during wartime. He died protecting me and my team during the same war as his brother. The third one is me. I took over when Tobirama made me Hokage before he died. I then ended the first Great Ninja War and led during the second and third Great Ninja Wars. I did a lot of things which we can talk about later. The last picture is of Minato Namikaze. He was my successor but unfortunately died 4 years ago during the Kyuubi attack. He died sealing the Kyuubi into you. Sarutobi explained to the boy, who was fascinated by the previous Hokages. He was especially fascinated by Tobirama. Wow, that's really cool, Gigi. Do you know anything about this Tobirama guy? He sounds really cool. Naruto asked as the other clones in the room nodded their heads in agreement. Never would have thought he would like Tobirama-sensei. I thought he would go straight for his dad. Oh well, I'm sure Minato will understand. Yes, I do. In fact, I was his student, so I know all about him. He even wrote many books about his life and about other things, he said as he went to the bookshelf to pick out a few books written by Tobirama. He then placed them on the desk and sealed them into a scroll. You can take these with you at the end of the day, Sarutobi explained to the clones, who nodded their heads. Now, it's time for you to become my apprentice and learn the ins and outs of this job. The first thing is, Hiruzen, I need to demon, what are you doing in this office? An old man with bandages wrapped around his left arm yelled as he pointed his cane at Naruto. Naruto immediately sensed the negative energy coming off of the man, snarled at him, and spoke with a dark tone. Gigi, I thought we left the corpses in the morgue to rot. Sarutobi was doing his best not to laugh at what Naruto said and steeled his facial expressions. Danzo, I will have you know that you are not to barge into this office whenever you feel like it. Also, it would be good for your health if you remembered the law I passed 4 years ago. He shouted at the advisor, who rolled his eyes. I was only coming to ask why you let an animal into the sacred office of Hokage. Danzo sneered. Last time I checked, the garbage wasn't supposed to be here either. If you are looking for the drop-off point, it's out back. Naruto fired back at the Warhawk, who glared at the boy even harder. This time Sarutobi along with his A and B guards couldn't hold in their laughs and started laughing at the old man who was fuming. "This isn't over, brat. It would be wise if you didn't make me one of your enemies," Danzo said to the child who smirked at him. "It would be wise if you got your skin checked because last time I checked dirt looks better than you." Naruto fired back, which made everyone laugh even more at Danzo, who sulked out of the room. After a few minutes passed, Sarutobi regained his composure and looked at Naruto with a fond smile. "Nice quick thinking, Naruto, but whatever you do, if you see that man and I or any of your other guardians are not around, do not go near him. If you see him and you are in the village, I want you to run and flare your chakra 5 times. Sarutobi said with steel in his voice that left no room for arguing. "Hi Gigi, I will do that." Naruto responded with a thumbs up. "Good, now where were we?" Sarutobi said as he started to teach Naruto and his clones about the basics of paperwork. Training Ground 23 on March 10, 52 AFK. It had been 3 months since Makoto and Hitomi had started training Naruto and Hinata, and they were very impressed with their results. Naruto was naturally very good at stealth and infiltration since he lived in a forest for a large portion of his life. He was also a chakra battery, which meant that he was very good at learning ninjutsu. He was also strangely good at chakra control, which stumped the two mothers. Hinata was also improving very well. They found out that she had a very strong affinity for water, which made sense for her due to how naturally flexible she was. While she didn't have as much chakra as Naruto, she was also surprisingly good at ninjutsu. She now knew all 3 basic jutsu, along with around 5 water jutsu of varying strength. She was also learning medical ninjutsu, which she was an intern started teaching Naruto. While she took to it like a fish to water, Naruto had a little bit of trouble getting it at first, but after countless weeks of relentless practicing, he finally got the hang of it. The places where Naruto really shined were the seals that Mito was teaching him and the politics that he was learning for the Hokage. He was a once-in-a-generation prodigy when it came to the sacred art of Fuinjutsu. When Mito went to measure his talent, she measured him at a 4 out of 50 in the Uzumaki seal rank list. Naruto, being the excited child he was, had proclaimed that before the exams he would be a level 50 seal sage, which made Mito laugh hysterically in his head. Right now, Naruto was sitting under a tree taking a break from his training. He was reminiscing how far he had come in his training when he remembered the first successful seal he had ever made. Flashback. Naruto was sitting on the floor of his apartment in the afternoon. He had been let out of training for the day since Yugao and Kakashi had to take a mission and Mikoto had to go shopping. So he went back to the apartment and practiced his seals. "Bachan, this is really fun," he said as he practiced his seal markings on a piece of parchment. "He's picking this up quickly. It's a shame Tsunade never took the seals as much as I or her daughter did. Though even I didn't take to seals as fast as he is right now. He's only 4 and he's a novice seal maker. At this rate, he could be on the level of Minato and Kushina before he's 6, which is unheard of. Hell, he could become a master before he's 10. He might be the first person to ever reach seal sage since the first Uzumaki clan head over 200 years ago," Mito thought to herself as she watched her great-grandson practice his symbols with practice ease. He had been using shadow clones up to this point, and they had been able to get his handwriting down to perfection. "Yes, Guppy, I bet it is fun," she said to the small child from inside of his mind. After a few more minutes of practicing, he tried to make a storage scroll. He had read and been explained how they worked, and wanted to try it. He started drawing the symbols on the parchment of the scroll very slowly and carefully. It took him a solid 20 minutes of slow strokes, but he had made it. After letting the ink dry, Naruto stood up and grabbed a few pillows. He then placed them onto the seals and formed the Ram Hansel. "Fuin!" he yelled, and to his amazement, the pillows disappeared into the scroll, which then immediately rolled up. "Bachan, look! Did you see that?" "I did it." "Yes, I did, Guppy," she said with a grandmotherly smile on her face. She looked over at Akari, who had a tear in her eye and was looking at a photo of Minato and Kushina. Mito said a silent prayer to the 2 deceased legends and sighed. Naruto was ecstatic and tried to see what else he was able to seal into the scrolls. He started grabbing pots, pans, clothing, and even some of Yugao's dirty laundry, much to the dismay of the 2 women that were residing in his head. He eventually sealed up the entire apartment, and was quite pleased with himself. That was until he felt 2 large amounts of Ki behind him. Naruto turned around to find 2 very angry siblings who had just returned from a quick mission. Kakashi then forced Naruto to not only unseal everything but also wash the dirty clothes and put everything back without the use of clones. Much to say, Naruto never sealed up anything in the apartment again. Flashback end. Naruto smirked to himself as he remembered the memory. He also then grimaced when he remembered the tough training that Yugao put him through the next morning as a punishment. The next morning, "Naruto," Mikoto called as she waved a hand in front of his face. Naruto then snapped out of his thoughts as he looked at his trainer and mother figure. "Yes, sorry, I was just thinking." "What were you thinking about?" she asked as she sat down next to him on the tree root. "Well, I was thinking about seals." He then explained the memory to Mikoto, who laughed at him, which made him blush. "I would have done the same thing as Yugao and Kakashi if you had done that to me." She laughed as she ruffled the small boy's blonde hair. "Hey," he said as he crossed his arms and huffed. "I thought it was funny." "I bet you did, Naruto," she said as she looked back at the field where his clones were practicing the jutsus from the scroll. I bet you did. The two sat there for a while in silence before the clones started dispelling. Naruto then quickly went into a lotus position so that he could sort of the memories from each clone. Over the past 3 months, both Naruto and Hinata had been slowly discovering just how useful shadow clones could be. Naruto used them to slowly read the entire Konoha library and learn all the common information that most genin ninjas learned in the 12 years they spent at the academy. 1. Hinata, while also doing the same thing, was using her clones to practice things like Kyudo, 2. Medical scrolls and teachings of one's slug Sannin, and also politics. Naruto looked at Mikoto, who was dozing off slightly, and smiled. He had grown close to his teacher and was glad that he saw her so often. Though he would miss training with his siblings or the Hyugas, Mikoto was like a real mother to him. That wasn't to say that Akari wasn't also his mother. Naruto just acknowledged that she was a motherly figure. Though he found that thinking about it for too long made him sad and confused. After 20 minutes, Naruto's clones had finished displaying and he was able to sort out all the newly found skills that he had gained in the day. He opened his eyes and saw that Mikoto was now totally asleep and shook her slightly. Mikoto-sensei, he said quietly to the woman, who immediately opened her eyes. Oh, I must have dozed off at some point while he was dispelling his clones. She thought to herself as she sat up, but slightly winced as she grabbed her side. Ah, damn bastard, he sure hits hard. Naruto noticed this and frowned slightly. Over the past few weeks, he had noticed that his mother figure/teacher would come to meet him at the training grounds with bags under her eyes or bruised on her face. He also noticed how sad she looked at the end of each day. He had decided, with the guidance of Akari and Mito, to leave the situation alone. But now it was obvious that something was wrong. Bachan, Ka-chan, what's wrong with Mikoto Ka-chan? He asked the two beings in his mind. Naruto seal. Mito looked at Akari, who was currently sighing to herself. The fox spirit knew that her son was going to ask about everything that was happening to Mikoto. She just hoped that it wouldn't be this soon. What do we tell him? The legendary Uzumaki asked. Well, we can tell him how marriage works. But that could possibly lead to the what is love question. She replied as she looked at her lap. I say we just tell him that Fugaku is an ass and that he beats his wife, Mito said with a growl. I think Tobirama might have had the right idea to hate Uchihas. Akari chuckled to herself, which made Mito cackle out loud. You kidding me? I agreed with him. She yelled as she continued to laugh, which made Akari's sweat drop. I just learned to give them the benefit of the doubt most of the time. But yes, I hate Yuki, as they are nothing but trouble except for 4 I've met in my entire lifetime. The ages, Uzumaki said. Anyway, what should we tell Naruto? Akari asked as she tried to get the conversation back on track. Just tell him she's having a rough time at home, Mito said with a wave of the hand. Alright, outside world. She's just having a rough time at him, Naruto-kun, Akari repeated, which made Naruto frown. Mikoto Ka-chan, are you okay? Naruto asked, much to the surprise of Mikoto. Man, his sensing and observation skills are crazy. Oh well, he's been on to me for a couple of weeks now, so no harm in venting to a child. She thought as she sighed. Why don't we get some food and then I can try to explain to you what's going on in my life? She said with a sigh as she stood up and stretched. Okay, Naruto said with a smile. He didn't like seeing people he knew sad and always tried to do anything he possibly could to make them feel better. After a few minutes, Mikoto took Naruto's hand and led him to a strange building with flaps and stools. The building was fairly small and radiated a strange salty smell along with the flavors of different meats being cooked. Mikoto led Naruto into the building and placed him on a stool. Hello, and welcome to Ichiraku Ramen. A small girl around the age of 9 said with a wide smile on her face. She was a fairly normal-looking girl who had long flowing brown hair and black eyes. I am Chan, Mikoto said with a warm smile on her face as Naruto tried to hide under the bar's edge. How are you, Mikoto-chan? It's been a while, do you want me to get my 2-san? She asked while looking curiously at a tuft of blonde hair that was peeking out from the bar's edge. Yes please, that would be much appreciated, Mikoto sighed as she rubbed Naruto's back. She knew how Naruto was around new people and how scared he could get. Man, the village really messed up this poor child. She thought sadly. Koto-chan, is that you? She looked up and smiled as she saw a large man walk from behind the back door of the ramen bar. He was a large portly man who had short brown hair wrapped in a bandana. Tuchi-kun, it's been a while, she said as she looked at her old friend with a smile. Yes it has, it's been 3 years since you were last here? He asked as he leaned on the counter. Yeah, she mumbled to herself as she frowned. It's a shame that Fugaku is such an ass, he mumbled to himself, which made Mikoto nod her head in agreement. While I agree with you, could you try not to curse in front of children? She asked with a sly smirk on her face. Children? I don't see any, the ramen chef said as he looked around the restaurant. Mikoto then pulled Naruto into her lap and patted his head. Well, isn't this a child? She asked with a wide smile on her face. Tuchi's eyes immediately widened as he looked at the blonde child in front of him. He looked him over and leaned in closely and gasped. Is that, he said as he looked his old friend dead in the eyes. I can neither confirm nor deny that this is his child, she said with a wink which made the chef smirk. So the old man gave you custody to him? He asked the Uchiha matriarch, who shook her head. No, something's happened that I'm not allowed to speak about, but I'm training him and looking after him. she explained to her old teammate who nodded his head. So Naruto, would you like some ramen? Makoto asked the small child whose head was nestled deep in her expansive G-cup chest. She giggled as she felt him remove his head and look at her with a questioning look. What's ramen? It was as if the world stopped for Tucci and Ayam, who had sprinted from the kitchen to look at the small boy. Tucci's eyes widened as he looked at his daughter and screamed at the top of his lungs. Ayam, get me a bowl of miso ramen. His daughter didn't need to be told twice as she sprinted into the kitchen to start making the bowl of ramen. Tucci then looked at Makoto, who was giggling, and smiled at her. Do you want your normal? She nodded her head, which made him smile. Alright, I'll be back. Naruto looked at Makoto and raised his eyebrow. Do you know him? He asked, which made her nod her head. Yes, we were teammates back when he used to be a ninja. We were in the 3rd Great Shinobi War along with Minato Namikaze, the 4th Hokage. 3. We were known as Team 7 until all 3 of us became Jonin. Then he took on the new Team 7, which was made up of Kakashi Hatake, Rin, though I forget her last name, and Obito Uchiha. She explained to the small boy, who nodded his head in understanding. He had remembered the Hokage talking about how ninja teams worked in one of his days when he was with him. What happened to them? He then proceeded to ask. You can ask Kakashi about that. It's not my place to ask about his teammates, she said as she looked at some of the photos on the wall. Naruto, however, could feel the sadness in her and frowned internally. Alright, so something bad must have happened. I'll have to remember to ask Nichan when he gets home, he thought to himself. After a few minutes of silence, Ayam and Teuchi walked out with Naruto's first bowl of ramen and placed it in front of him. Makoto then placed him back on his own stool and looked at him. Well, aren't you going to try it? She innocently asked. If he's anything like his parents, he'll be addicted the first taste he gets. The adults both inside Naruto's head and outside his head thought simultaneously as Naruto put his hands together. Itadakimasu, he said in a quiet voice as he broke his chopsticks. He then proceeded to tentatively take a noodle from the bowl and taste it. As soon as the salty noodle hit his tongue, his eyes widened and filled with stars. He then immediately began to inhale the bowl of liquid gold in front of him. Looks like we got another customer, Ayam, Tucci said happily as he watched Naruto eat his ramen with glee. Makoto smiled at the boy and slowly ate her own bowl of shrimp ramen. She then nodded to Tucci, who went back to start making Naruto bowl after bowl of ramen. Once Naruto placed his chopsticks down, he sighed. He had just finished his 3rd bowl and wanted to take a small break so that he could get to the bottom of what was bugging him. So Makoto-ka-chan, are you okay? He asked as he turned to face her. She sighed and readied herself for the conversation that she was about to have. She then turned around in her seat and looked at Naruto, who had a serious look on his face. Kami, he looks just like Minato, she thought to herself as she placed down her chopsticks. Naruto, what do you know about relationships? Makoto asked the boy. Well, from what I've read, there are several different kinds of relationships. There are friends, siblings, lovers, boyfriend and girlfriend, and husband and wife. There are different emotions attached to different kinds of relationships, he said as he looked at Makoto. Wow, he's smart, she thought to herself. You are correct, Naruto, but it's a little more complicated than that. You see, I am married, but it's not by choice, she explained, which made Naruto's brows scrunch in confusion. Wait, but all the books I've read said that marriage was about love, he said to the women, who sadly smiled at him. Well, most of the time it's true. But sometimes people get forced into things like marriages on purpose, she said as she looked at the bowl of ramen for a second. Did you get forced to marry Fugaku Uchiha? He asked Makoto, whose eyes widened. How did you know that? She asked him, which made him smile. Gigi told me to know the names of the clan heads. He walked into the office one day talking about you, but I didn't know he was talking about you at the time. He said some really mean words that Gigi told me never to say to a woman. Naruto looked down at the floor. I'm sorry I couldn't get him to stop. Makoto then immediately pulled Naruto into a hug before he started crying. She then shushed him and rubbed his back. It's okay, baby, you didn't have to do anything, she said into his ear, but he was being mean to you and I didn't stop him. I'm sorry, please don't leave me, he said into her chest, which made her hug him harder. Oh Minato, how far this village has fallen. This poor child. Mito and Akari had chosen to just watch and listen to what was going on outside, but even they couldn't help but cry out what Naruto had said. Akari herself had taken it very hard. Oh sweetie, I won't leave you, Makoto said softly into the boy's ears as she hugged him. Why you won't, he stuttered out as he raised his head to meet her eyes. Never in a million years will I ever leave you. I'll always be with you. So will Hitomi and definitely Hinata. She'd go with you to the ends of the earth, Makoto said to the boy, who nodded his head. After taking a few minutes to calm down, she continued talking. Fugaku and I never liked each other. Well, he did, but I definitely didn't. He just wanted me as a trophy for him. Another person for his conquest, but unlike all the other girls, I didn't let him. So he used the clan to force me into a marriage with him, she said sadly as she looked at the boy, who had a frown on his face. Makoto took a few minutes to compose herself and forged on. She honestly didn't know why she was saying so much to the 4-year-old, but it definitely did help. Even though I am an Uchiha, I came from a very poor family. When Fugaku's family, the main family, offered the marriage contract, they had to accept it or else they wouldn't have been able to survive. So, they accepted and I was married to him. I hate it, and I still do. The yelling, the fights, the duties, I hate it all. So why can't you leave? Naruto asked his mother figure. If you don't like it so much, why can't you leave? Well, it's a contract. A contract that says till death do us part. Unless another clan gives me refuge, then I can't leave the Uchi house. She said somberly. What about your kids? Itachi and Sasuke. Don't they see what's happening? Naruto asked with a small amount of hope in his voice. Naruto, I want you to know something, she said as she looked at him dead in the eyes. If you get into a relationship and the woman says no, listen. No means stop immediately. If she says no or stop, you stop immediately and start apologizing. She said with a fire in her eyes. She looked at him and even activated her Sharingan to enforce the seriousness of what she said. Kit, she's right. If a woman ever says no or stop, you stop immediately. Do you understand? Akari yelled in his head, which made him wince. She was also purposely making his head hurt to make sure he understood the point. Hi, Kaa-chan. I understand. He thought to his mother, who grunted in response. Naruto, are you listening to me? Mikoto asked in a dangerously low voice. Hi. Kaa-chan just said the same thing and was making my head hurt. I'm sorry, but I understand what you said. He yelled, which made Mikoto shut off her eyes and smile at him. Good. I'm glad you understand that, because sometimes men don't understand that. She said quietly. 4. Naruto looked at her and sensed her chakra go cold. He then went over to Mikoto and hugged her tightly. He felt her start crying into him and continued to hug her. While he wasn't that tall, he was able to hop into her lap and hug her. I just wanted a normal life. She sobbed into Naruto, who rubbed her back. He had seen Kakashi do it to Yugao after a tough mission and wanted to do the same thing. After a few minutes of her sobbing, she finally calmed down and whipped her eyes. She took a few sips from her surprisingly still hot ramen, and the conversation died for a few minutes. Both went back to their food. I love them, she said quietly into her bowl. I hate how they got here, but I love them so much, but it feels like they are so far away. Itachi is always training because of his father and Sasuke, she sighed and continued to eat her comfort food. Sasuke is so much like his father. He's cold and ruthless. He's demanding and doesn't know what the word no is. He thinks that since he's an Uchiha he can get whatever he wants. She frowned and pulled a new bowl of ramen that Tucci had placed on the counter towards her. It makes me so sad that I can't help them grow. I can't help them no matter how much I try, I always get yelled at, and she went silent as she ate her food. And Naruto said quietly. Fear laced in his voice. Beat me, she said quietly. For Naruto, those words rang in his head. He had been beaten so many times as a child. At the time he had no clue why, but he got horribly beaten. He remembered the times he lay broken and hurt on the streets. He felt so angry that someone would do that to someone who he thought was the kindest, sweetest person on the planet. Suddenly he felt something inside him snap. He felt a rush of power flood through him. He felt like something inside of him had broken and let loose a surge of energy. He could feel his eyes getting sharper, his teeth getting sharper, his nails getting longer, and his whiskers getting darker. Mikoto looked at Naruto with wide eyes as she said the chakra cloak appear around Naruto. It was red, wispy, and took the form of a fox. There were red ears and a tail formed from the bubble of chakra that surrounded the 4-year-old. Wow, that's the power of the 9 tails. Wait, shit, that's the 9 tails power. She quickly snapped out of her stupor as she recognized what was happening. Naruto! You need to calm down, Akari said from the seal. She felt the draw of her power and immediately tried to take it back, but it didn't work. I know you are upset right now, but you need to calm down. You are scaring Mikoto. That seemed to get Naruto to start thinking, and he looked at a now terrified Mikoto. He then tried to calm himself down and regained control of the power. After a few minutes, the cloak receded and Naruto had regained control of his chakra again. He stumbled from the stool he had been sitting on and was then caught by Mikoto. Mikoto Keika-chan, he whispered. Shoo, it's okay, don't speak, just close your eyes, she said as she carried him. She turned to Tucci, whose eyes were wide as he looked around the shop. Luckily nothing got damaged by the insane chakra of the 9 tails. She then paid for the bowls of ramen sunshine back to the apartment that Naruto lived in. She used the key that she had been given and opened the door. Once she entered the home, she locked the door and reset the security seals that were in place. She went over to Naruto's room and sat him down. Naruto-kun, she said quietly. We need to get you clean and into your sleep clothes. I need you to wake up for me for just a few minutes, she said sweetly. After getting a nod from Naruto, she then went to take off his clothing and get him bathed and changed into pajamas. Alright Naru, I'm going to go run back to my house. Do you want me to stay with you? She asked the half-asleep boy. She knew that she was going to stay with him since Kakashi and Yugao were out on a mission. Ka-chan stay, he said softly as he slowly fell asleep on his bed. Once he said those words, any part of her that wanted her to go back to the compound was silenced. She looked in Yugao's room and picked out a pair of short shorts that barely covered half of her butt and took off her shirt, revealing a black, then used the toothbrush that she slept at the apartment whenever Kakashi and Yugao were out, and brushed her teeth and put her hair into a bun. Once her hygiene was taken care of, she turned off the bathroom lights and double-checked the security seals around the house to make sure they were totally safe. Once she was totally sure that everything was in order, she walked over to Naruto's bed and got into it. Naruto immediately felt the presence of someone and tensed. Mikoto felt this and rubbed his head. "Don't worry, Naruto-kun, it's me," she whispered into his ear as she pressed him against her chest. "I love you, Ka-chan," he said as he finally fell asleep. Mikoto let a tear fall from her face and kissed Naruto's forehead. "I love you too, Sochi-kun," she said as she fell into the best sleep she's ever had in her entire life. "I love you so much." Hyuga main house on June 12, 52 AFK. Hinata was terrified. Sure, she had been scared of thunder before, but right now she was terrified of what was going on outside of her window. It had started out as any normal June day. Sure, she could feel the moisture in the air, but she just thought that it was her chakra being weird. Apparently, she now had a newfound skill in predicting the weather. Hinata huddled on her bed as sheets of rain poured onto the roof for the Hyuga compound. She could see the large flashes of lightning as they streaked across the sky. She could even feel the wind every time it blew on her barely open window. After a rather loud clap of thunder, she had had enough. She scurried out of her bedroom and ran down the hallway in sheer terror. She instinctively activated her Byakugan and looked around for anywhere she could hide. Once she found where she wanted to go, she sprinted off to go hide. Living in a cave for a year taught Naruto a lot of things. It taught him how to keep his spaces clean and rodent-free, and it taught him how to function alone. But one of the most important things it taught him was the ability to sense your surroundings even when you are asleep. It took him 8 months of constant training, but he was able to sense other chakra signatures even when he isn't awake. Naruto had been blissfully asleep dreaming about ramen when he felt a small alarm bell go off in his head. He quickly sat up and looked around to see where he was. He saw that he wasn't in his apartment, but then quickly remembered that he was staying at the Hyuga compound since it was their day to train him on the schedule. He rubbed his eyes and looked around to see what was wrong. Anyone awake in there? He thought as he closed his eyes to better get a sense of what was wrong. He sighed when he didn't get a response from anyone, meaning that both the entities that lived in his head were asleep. Naruto then felt Hinata's chakra and how she was in distress and was running. He opened his eyes and sprinted out of his room. Naruto channeled chakra to his eyes and activated his 2-Tomo Sharingan and sprinted to where Hinata was. After a few minutes of running, he found her in a long hallway hiding. He flared his chakra so that it would alert her that he was there and smiled when she bolted into his arms. "Hinata-chan, what's going on?" he asked quietly as he hugged the slightly shaking girl who was in his arms. The Thunder S scared me." She stuttered into his chest, which made him smile a little. "You're scared?" he whispered into her ear, which made the girl nod her head. "Okay, well, why don't you sleep with me? I won't let the thunder hurt you," he sweetly suggested, which made her eyes widen. "Ah, really?" she asked with hope in her eyes. Naruto nodded his head and smiled at her, which put her at ease slightly. He led her to the room he was sleeping in and slid open the door. He deactivated his Sharingan and closed the door. He then put Hinata down on one side of the bed and laid on the other side. When another loud clap of thunder rattled the compound, Hinata started whimpering and scooted over to Naruto, who instinctively wrapped his arms around her and released a calming aura of chakra so that they both could sleep. When morning finally came, Hitomi went to go wake up the children. She walked to Hinata's room and found that she wasn't there. She instantly started panicking and activated her Byakugan. She looked around for her daughter and found her in another room. Curious as to where she was, Hitomi walked to the door her daughter was behind. She deactivated her eyes and opened the door. She grinned at the sight that she saw. Naruto and Hinata wrap in a very close hug with Hinata's head pressed against Naruto's chest. Hitomi internally squealed kawaii and ran to get a camera. As she was running, she ran into a number of the branch family mothers and brought them along to see how cute the sleeping children were. They all went to Naruto's room and found them both still asleep. They all smiled and quietly squealed at how cute of a sight it was. Naruto opened one of his eyes and looked at the gathering of mothers and raised his eyebrow. Hitomi saw this and sweetly smiled at the boy. Naruto saw that it was time for him and Hinata to get up. He then looked down and saw that Hinata was borrowed into his arms and started to blush. "I see you got a new edition last night, Naruto." Hitomi spoke with a light tone of amusement in her voice, which made Naruto blush even more. She then went over to Hinata and kissed her good morning. Feeling that someone was kissing her, Hinata opened her eyes and saw her mother leaning over her. "Good morning, Ka-chan." Hinata smiled as she yawned. "Good morning, Hinata, did you have a good sleep?" her mother asked with a smirk on her face. "Hi." The small girl spoke as she tried to get up but found herself tangled. She looked down and saw that she was wrapped in Naruto's arms and went nuclear, which made Hitomi's smile even wider. "I think it's time for her to go get changed and clean, Naruto," Hitomi said to the equally embarrassed boy, who instantly let go of his friend, who jumped off of him and ran out of his room. Hitomi smirked as she watched her daughter run back to her room. "I assume she got scared and went to you last night during the storm?" she asked the boy, who nodded his head. I felt that she was scared and I went to her. I found her in a hallway crying, so I let her sleep here. It happened with the animals sometimes, and it helps if they sleep with something to make them feel better. He explained to the mother, who nodded her head. Okay, just don't make this a habit. I don't know what Hayashi would do if he heard about this happening more than once, she declared to the boy, whose face went pale, which made her laugh again. Don't worry, I won't tell him, and neither will the other mothers. You have nothing to worry about, she reassured the child, who let out a breath he didn't know he was holding in. Thank you, he whispered to the matriarch of the Hyuga clan. She smiled sweetly at the boy and then left his room. When you are ready, we will be in the dining room, she told the boy, who nodded his head. After 25 minutes, Naruto was dressed in his normal training outfit. He was wearing a pair of long black pants and a short-sleeved blue shirt with a green spiral on the back. He looked around the room and made sure that everything was in order. Once he was sure it was, he left the room and walked to the dining room. In the 6 months that Naruto had been training, he had been at the Hyuga compound at least 3 times each week. He had grown familiar with everyone who lived there and greeted them all with smiles and waves. He continued to walk down the elegantly decorated hallways that connected the different floors and sections of the massive compound. Once he made it to the dining room, he still couldn't help but look around and gasp. There were 2 large sliding doors that opened up to a large room that looked out to a zen garden. There were portraits of past clan heads and their families and even ancient-looking tapestries. He looked around and his eyes led to the medium-sized wooden table that had 6 chairs around it. There were 2 on each side and 1 and both of the ends of the table. Currently, 3 out of the 6 chairs were being used. Hayashi was sitting at the head of the table looking at a few documents. Hitomi was sitting on the other end talking to one of the branch members who was going to be bringing them breakfast, and Hinata was sitting in one of the chairs that were facing Naruto. She was reading a book on anatomy. Good morning, Hayashi-sama, Naruto greeted as he bowed at the waist. Hayashi looked up at the boy and smirked as he watched the son of his rival bow to him. The first time he saw Naruto, he knew that he was Minato's son. Good morning, Naruto, how are you doing this morning? He asked as he looked back down at the papers that he was originally reading. I am fine this morning, the child said as he made his way to the table. He looked at his best friend and smiled at her. She smiled back, but with a slight blush on her face which made Hitomi smirk. What are you going to be doing today? Hayashi asked at the table, still not glancing from his papers. Well, we have 2 months till the exams in Kiri, so I'm going to be testing their teamwork in a series of tests and exercises, Hitomi said with a smile. She looked at the 2 children and thought about how far they had come since the beginning. She had told Hayashi about the Sandame's plan and he responded with mixed feelings. He truly cared about his daughter, and was very pleased to know that she was the youngest Hyuga ever to activate the Byakugan. He was not pleased with the fact that Sarutobi wanted her and Naruto to strengthen the reputation of the village. He thought that the idea was insane, but was swayed when Hitomi told him that Hinata was able to make 165 shadow clones. He still didn't like the idea, but eventually relented and agreed. What shocked Hitomi was how on board he was with having Naruto stay at the compound so frequently. The clan was a 50-50 split when it came to Naruto. Most of the women and children found the boy to be very nice and pleasant. They even let him help them through the use of his clones. Most of the men, however, didn't like the boy at all. Even after the support of both Hisashi and Hisashi, they didn't like him. Hisashi himself went out to say that he wouldn't know what would have happened had Naruto not stopped the cloud meme that had taken Hinata. But it still didn't help. That sounds like a great idea, Hayashi said as he moved his documents to make room for the breakfast that one of the branch members brought out. It consisted of eggs, toast, porridge, and a few sausage links. I'm going to send my clones to Jiji-sensei since I'm his apprentice, some clones to the library, and some clones to my apartment to practice seals, Naruto said after he thanked the person who brought him his breakfast. How is being the Hokage's apprentice, Naruto? Hitomi asked after she swallowed her food. It's really cool. I get to learn about how he does his job, politics, and the ins and outs of the village, Naruto explained, which made both adults nod his head. That's interesting that he's getting you involved with politics, Hayashi said as he thought about the implications that Sarutobi's move to make the Jinchurik his apprentice. It's actually really interesting. Since I'm a censor, I can tell when people are lying and it helps me learn how to read people. Jiji doesn't let me talk when he's meeting with people except when people talk to me first, Naruto said, which made Hayashi nod his head. He had seen Naruto's clones in the office numerous times and was quite impressed with the boy. How about you, Hinata? Naruto asked the girl who had due to being put on the spot so suddenly. Well, I'm also going to send some clones to the library, but most of them will be practicing or studying. She stuttered to the group who nodded their heads. During the time that Hinata had known Naruto, her stutter had gotten much better, but she still sometimes did it out of habit but was quickly getting out of it. Very good, Hinata, I'm very proud of you for getting so good at the 2 trigram 16 palms technique, Hayashi said as he praised his daughter. 1. Hitomi also smiled and nodded her head at the girl who blushed. Yeah, Hinata-chan, you're getting really good, the blonde said with a large smile on his face. But I do have a question. Oh? Hayashi asked as he looked at the blonde. What would that be? Well, why can't other people do the palm techniques? He asked, which made Hitomi nearly choke on her food. What do you mean? Hayashi replied as he eyed the child. Well, the technique requires for the user to hit the Tenketsu point in the body, right? He said as he looked at Hayashi, who slowly nodded his head. Well, why can't other people do it as well? The Byakugan allows for us to see the points so that we can close them. The techniques require the precision of the Byakugan so that you can see what you're doing, Hitomi explained to the blonde, who nodded his head. Yeah, I know that, but what if you just memorize the points in the body? He asked, which made the room go dead silent. Hitomi looked at Hayashi for an answer but was shocked when he didn't have one right away. The man was actually intrigued by the idea of a way for you not to need the Byakugan to do the palm technique. After a few minutes of silence, Hayashi finally answered the question. Well, Naruto, no one had actually ever thought of that before, he said as he looked at the boy. Well, he definitely got his father's ability to pick things apart. Really? He asked, which made the man nod his head. Oh well, Naruto said as he went back to eating his food. After a few more minutes of eating, Hitomi called the two children to follow her to one of the Hyuga training grounds. Both children said goodbye to the clan head, who smiled at them and followed Hitomi. After a short walk, Hitomi walked the kids to the training ground and got them ready to train. She got them all stretched out and had them run around the field. After their 3-mile run, she had them do physical exercises. Naruto was up to 65 push-ups and 80 sit-ups with 100 jumping jacks, while Hinata was doing 45 push-ups, 65 sit-ups, and 85 jumping jacks. Both were very physically fit 4-year-olds and were around genin level if Hitomi had to gauge their strengths. When the children concluded their warm-ups, she called them both over to the center of the grounds and smiled at them. She then took out a scroll from her pouch and smiled. Alright, Naruto and Hinata, as you know, you will be participating in the Chunin exams. Meaning that you need to have some skills other than taijutsu and ninjutsu. You need actual ninja skills, she explained as she walked in front of them in a line. Today, you will be trying to get a second version of this scroll that I have hidden somewhere in the village, she said as she handed Hinata the scroll. You have 7 hours to find it, she said to the duo, who nodded their heads. Good luck, she said before she disappeared in a swirl of leaves. Naruto-kun, what are we going to do? Hinata said as she looked at the scroll in her hands. Well, maybe the scroll has some instructions on it, he said as he gestured for the scroll from Hinata's hand. He then opened it and read what it said. While I may be one, the best things come in pairs. Naruto looked at the scroll and scowled at it. That doesn't make any sense at all, he shouted as he handed Hinata the scroll. She took it and then read it again. Maybe it means it's where a bunch of other scrolls are. Maybe it's at the library, she suggested to the blonde, who put his hand on his chin. Yeah, you could be right, he said as he started running towards the library. He looked behind him and saw Hinata running after him. Wait, couldn't we track the scroll? Naruto suddenly stopped in the middle of the training ground. What's wrong, Naruto? Hinata asked as she looked at her friend. I have an idea. He bit his thumb and started weaving hand seals. Once he was done, he slammed his hand on the ground and shouted, summoning jutsu. Kitsune. Out of the plume of smoke came a small brown fox that had black tips on its ears. It was the size of a normal house cat and walked over to Naruto. Hey, Naru-chan, she said as she licked the boy's face. Hey, Fima-chan, Naruto called to the fox, who yipped in excitement. We need your help. What do you need help with? The fox asked as she looked between Naruto and Hinata. Is it possible that you can track the scent off of this scroll? He asked the fox, who nodded its head. Hinata instantly knew what he was trying to do. Instead of going in blindly to a location that they had a hunch the scroll would be, they would use the fox to track the scent of the scroll and find it that way. Hinata looked at Naruto and smiled at him. Good idea, Naruto-kun, she complimented the boy, who smiled back. Thanks, Hinata, he yelled as he held out the scroll for the fox to smell. I have a scent that leads this way, Fima said as she pointed in the direction towards the center of Konoha. Alright. Let's go find that scroll, Naruto shouted as the trio ran towards the center of town. Fima led the trio all over Konoha as they tried to find this scroll. She led them through the market, through the park, and even in and out of a few shops. They got strange looks from villagers, and it seemed that some of the shinobi were laughing at them. After 3 hours, they finally came to a dead end in a back alley. I'm sorry, Naru, but the trail ends here, Fima said as she lowered her head. It's okay, Fima-chan, you tried your best, Hinata said to the fox as she petted her head. Yeah, you can go back home now, we'll figure something out, Naruto told the fox, who yipped and left. And maybe it's not visible, Hinata said as she activated her Byakugan to try and find the scroll. I wish I could help, but I'm not supposed to use my eyes in public unless it's an emergency, Naruto said as he looked down. It's okay because I found something that might be helpful, Hinata said as she walked over to a brick that was misplaced on a wall. She then proceeds to pull it out, revealing a small scroll tucked away. Hinata, you found it, Naruto said as he hugged the girl, who smiled back. He then grabbed the scroll and read its contents. Good job, now all you need to do is return to the place you started from. Don't forget to take this as proof. It looks like all we need to do now is go back home, Naruto explained to Hinata, who nodded her head. The duo then proceeded to start their walk towards the Hyuga compound when Naruto felt something off. He grabbed Hinata's hand and lightly squeezed it. Naruto, what's wrong? She whispered to her friend. Someone is following us, he whispered back to her, and she nodded her head. What should we do? She asked. She didn't want to start a fight in such a crowded area. Follow me. He then started walking towards an empty training ground. They both then walked out into the middle and stopped. You can come out now, we know you are there. Naruto shouted to seemingly no one. He looked around and felt a single chakra signature. Suddenly, a figure dressed in all black wearing a rabbit mask appeared in the field in front of Naruto and Hinata. Hand me the scroll or you die, the figure said as they released a bit of ki. Hinata whispered Kai, which released her bow and quiver that had 25 arrows. She had a medium-sized wooden bow that had a slight indent in the center for her hand. Her quiver was strapped across her torso. She pulled out an arrow and ready to shoot it. Naruto stood in front of Hinata and moved his left foot behind him. He then lifted his arms up and narrowed his eyes. Who are you? Naruto asked as he looked around his surroundings to get a feel for the area. There were very few trees and was mostly a wide open field. He cursed silently but did wonder why the two voices in his head were quiet. Naru, this is a mission. We aren't gonna help you unless we think it's necessary. Akari said to the boy, who nodded his head in understanding. If you will not hand over the scroll, then you will be forced to. The figure then took off towards the duo. Naruto started sprinting towards the figure and threw a right punch to the figure's stomach. While Naruto was running, Hinata shot an arrow at the figure. The arrow was heading right towards Naruto, but at the last second Naruto felt the arrow coming due to his whiskers and moved his head. The figure, not expecting Naruto to suddenly move, had to dodge the arrow as well. They were able to dodge but were then hit in the knee by a kick from Naruto. Naruto then proceeded to land a punch in the right rib and then did a dropkick to get some distance. He then started going through hand seals. Fire style, fireball jutsu. Naruto launched several fireballs towards the figure, who was able to dodge them all. When they landed, they had to dodge an arrow from Hinata but were hit by a palm strike to the arm. What hit me? They thought to themselves as they turned around. They then saw that there was a clone of Hinata behind them. Shit, they thought as they tried to avoid both arrows and palm strikes from Hinata and her clone. Lightning style, thunder rain. Naruto launched several lightning bolts at the attacker, who was starting to get overwhelmed by the attack from the two children. They were able to dispel the clone of Hinata but were shot in the upper arm by an arrow. Seeing that her attacker was distracted, Hinata sprinted and got ready to do a palm strike when she felt the attacker grab her. The attacker looked at Naruto and held a kunai at Hinata's neck. Hand me the scroll or she dies. Naruto was freaking out. He didn't know what to do because all he had was one single shuriken and a kunai. He knew he couldn't throw it at the attacker because there was a chance that it could hit Hinata. What can I do? I wish there was a way I could get behind her. Wait, the fourth Hokage was able to teleport with a kunai that he threw. What if I threw the shuriken and substituted myself with it? That could work. Naruto grabbed the shuriken and threw it. He aimed for the attacker's head. When the attacker saw the shuriken heading for their head, they moved their head out of the way. Is that all you've got? They called out to Naruto, but then they looked closer and saw that Naruto was gone. I think I'm done, but so are you. The attacker turned their head and saw that Naruto had a kunai pointed directly at the swell of their back. He substituted with the shuriken so that he could get behind me. The kunai would stable me in the spine and cripple me. Wow, they both did fantastic jobs. Good job, guys. The attacker said as they let go of Hinata. Once Hinata was out of the figure's grasp, they lifted up the mask to reveal a smiling Hitomi. You both did a fantastic job and should be proud of what you both were able to accomplish. She smiled at the two children, who looked at her with confusion written on their faces. So that was you? Naruto shouted, which made her giggle. Yes, it was me. If you're wondering how you didn't recognize my chakra, it's because of a special seal a friend of mine made for me years ago. She explained, which made Naruto nod. I'm as sorry I shot you, Ka-chan, Hinata said as she lowered her head. Oh sweetie, it's okay. You didn't know it was me. You did a fantastic job. Hitomi sweetly praised Hinata and kissed her on the forehead. How about we all go home and get some dinner? I heard there might be ramen there. She smiled as she watched Naruto's eyes widen with stars in them. The trio walked over to the Hyuga compound and got ready for dinner, which was ramen, and for dessert cinnamon buns. Once dinner was over, Naruto and Hinata both sat down and meditated so that they could dispel their clones. After the clones were all dispelled, Naruto felt Kakashi and Yugao's chakra enter his range and smiled. Hey, Ne-chan! Naruto shouted as he ran up to Yugao, who giggled and hugged her brother tightly. Hi Naru, how was training? She asked the blonde, who smiled back at her. Naruto is doing very well and his teamwork with Hinata is spectacular, Hitomi replied to the blonde as she walked up to the ANBU agent. That's wonderful. She let go of Naruto and the three of them walked over to Kakashi, who also hugged Naruto. Yugao turned to look at Hitomi and smiled fondly. Do you think they will be ready for the test in a few weeks? She quietly asked the mother, who smirked. They'll be fine, Hitomi said as she took one last glance at the smiling blonde ball of sunshine that was talking to Kakashi. They'll do just fine. Hokage Tower Meeting Room B on June 23, 52 FK. It was a hot summer day in Konoha, and while Sarutobi would love to be out in the sun enjoying retirement, he was stuck in yet another council meeting. He looked around the large oak room and sighed to himself. There were 4 main governing bodies in Konoha. There was the Hokage, who was the leader of the village. They were in charge of all military and domestic affairs. They were the fire daimyo's representative in the hidden village. Usually, Hokage had absolute power, but in the time since the Third Ninja War, Sarutobi delegated some of the more monotonous tasks of Hokage to the civilian council. Then there were the village elders who were the advisors to the Hokage. They were meant to be the people who helped the Hokage with decisions that affected village people, included Danzo, Hamura, and Koharu. There usually were only 2 village elders, but Danzo was able to worm his way onto it due to being the civilian council representative. The third part included the clan heads. There were the 3 founding clans, which were the Senju, Uzumaki, and Uchiha. These clans have the first 3 seats in the council chambers. Then there were the Sarutobi, Hyuga, Nara, Inuzuka, Aburame, Yamanaka, and Akimichi clans, who were the next seats after the Uchiha. These were the main clans of Konoha, which were in charge of shinobi affairs since they provided the most amount of the shinobi forces of the village. Finally, there was the civilian side of the council. This governing body was created by Hashirama, disbanded by Tobirama, and brought back by Sarutobi during the Third War. They actually held no influence or power but were included in meetings due to the good grace of Sarutobi. Minato had tried to get rid of them but was dissuaded by the third Hokage, who thought that they were a good addition to the council. Today, though, Sarutobi found himself stuck in a meeting which was called by the civilians to discuss the sighting of Hinata Hyuga and Naruto Uzumaki. While they had been seen together 5 days ago, Danzo thought that it was a good idea to tell specific council members that morning. This is why there is now a council meeting happening. You can't let that demon associate with someone of her stature, Hokage-sama. One of the council members cried. 1. Yes, I agree with Hiruzen. You don't know if it is going to taint the good nature of the Hyuga clan. Hamura spoke in a calm voice. Enough, I have already said that I will not speak on the matter of Naruto any longer. Sarutobi cried as he lit his pipe. And why is that? Because you have grown soft in your old age? Danzo asked as he inwardly smirked. He had spies watching the Jinchuriki's every move when they could get to him, so he knew that Naruto and Hinata were in contact with each other a lot. No, it's because it is a clan issue, and last time I checked, Hayashi doesn't disapprove of Hinata being with Naruto. The aged leader responded as he looked at the Hyuga clan head, who nodded his head. Oh? Then why would he be staying at the compound so often? Danzo raised his eyebrow in an innocent manner which made Hiruzen narrow his eyes. That is because we agreed with his guardians that he would be staying with my clan whenever they were to be away, Hayashi said to the old man, who narrowed his eyes. What Hayashi said wasn't a full lie, but he didn't want to let the information slip that Naruto was at the compound 3 times a week. Wait, guardians? A black-haired lady said with a raised eyebrow. Yeah, we didn't see any papers pertaining to it having a guardian. Another member said. Well, he has 2 loving guardians who are very happy with the idea of living with Naruto, Sarutobi replied with a smirk. Who are the boys' guardians, Hokage-sama? The Nara clan head asked. Kakashi Hatake and Yuga Yuzuki. Shikaka's eyes immediately narrowed at the old man, which made him flinch slightly. When did this happen? The lazy man asked as he was now at full attention. A little over 7 months ago, Sarutobi said to the man who nodded his head. Sarutobi knew that Shikaka would be mad at the fact that he didn't tell him that Naruto had been adopted. It would have been logical to inform us of these things, Hokage-sama. Shibi Aburama added in. His face was as emotionless as possible, but if you were to listen closer, you could hear a slight buzzing sound coming from the inside of his coat. I'm sorry I didn't say anything to the council, but the circumstances of his adoption were an S-rank secret. Hiruzen explained to the council, which made them all narrow their eyes at him. Oh? Then why did it happen? Fugaka asked without looking up from the papers in front of him. He had noticed that Makoto was spending more and more amounts of time outside of the district, and had a feeling it was due to Naruto. Why would you like to know? I didn't think the mighty Uchiha clan would care about one single orphan. Hayashi asked, which made the Uchiha clan head narrow his eyes. Of course I would like to know about the most dangerous person in the village. How did Hayashi even get to know? Fugaka retorted, which made the man internally smirk. Because he was privy to the information, Sarutobi interjected as he watched the 2 men eye each other. It's always the Hyugas, is it not? Fugaka asked the Sandaime who eyed him. They are always the ones that need the pity and the help. I didn't think your clan was so weak that you needed to take care of a Jinchurik in order to look strong. Then again, what parent relies on a child to save their own daughter? The entire room dropped several degrees after Fugaka's statement. Tuzum, Shibi, Inochi, and Choza looked at the man with raised eyes. Hokage-sama, what is the fool with pink eye talking about now? Some asked the old man, who frowned and shook his head. Yes, what is he talking about? Inochi raised his eyebrow and he looked at the Uchiha head. Oh, you didn't hear? Naruto was the one who stopped the cloud meme that captured the Hyuga heiress. Fugaka smugly stated, which made all the members of the Shinobi Council's eyes widen. We don't care, so we are going to leave, the head of the civilian council said as he rose from his seat. After a few minutes, everyone who wasn't a member of the Shinobi Council, or was an elder, had left the room. Well, Fugaku, it seems that you've been snooping around again, Hiyashi said in a low tone, which made the man smirk at him. Yeah, and what are you going to do about it? You don't have your blonde protector here to stop me, do you? Fugaka asked, which made Hayashi clench his fists in anger. What's wrong? Did I strike a nerve? It would be best if you didn't talk about the yandere like that, Fugaka-san. Shibi defended his friend in an even tone. Yeah, we all know that you wouldn't be saying that if he and Kushina were here. In fact, if you did say it, they both would have beaten you black and blue. Some smirked, which made Fugaka narrow his eyes. That foreign red-headed bitch couldn't even touch me. It's no wonder she died that night. It didn't take long for the room to become saturated with levels of Ki. Tsum was ready to rip the Yukaya's head off while Choza had his fists ready to pound him. You would beat her? Shikaka asked with a raised eyebrow. I guess the rumors were true about what you do in your private time. This made Fugaka's eyes turn into the Sharingan, and he glared at the Nara clan head. What I do with my bitch is my own business, Nara, he stated with an icy edge to his voice. Maybe she would actually like you if you didn't hit her all the fucking time, but who knows? The Nara lazily commented as he waved the man off. If only Minato was here, he would have beaten the shit out of you if he heard you call Mikoto that, Inochi said, which made everyone nod in agreement. I didn't think you were that weak, Inochi. Why don't you come over here and do it yourself, or do you need your boyfriends to do it for you? Fugaku shot back, which made Shikaku and Choza glare at him. You know, it's actually a shame he died. I would have just loved to see the look on his face when my kids whipped the floor with whatever that horror would have popped out. Are you saying that the offspring of the greatest Hokage ever to live and the daughter of a legendary Sannin who is also the granddaughter of the first Hokage would not be great? Choza asked the man. Please, he was a weakling who got lucky and she was the daughter of a drunk, Fugake said, which made the already heavy amount of Ki in the room nearly double. It would be best for you to watch what you say about my successor and my student Uchiha-san, Sarutobi angrily interjected. Well, then why aren't they here, Sarutobi? They were weak and they died because of it. That useless hag couldn't even produce one good child. It died during childbirth. It's a shame though. I would have loved to see my child pummel it into the ground. Everyone glared at Fugaku except for Hayashi, since he knew that Naruto was leagues better than Sasuke and was on the level of Itachi. He also knew that Hinata was better than Sasuke as well. In fact, my child Itachi got promoted at the Chunin exams back in March and is one of the youngest to get promoted since the war. It seems that bitch has one use in this world and it's making babies. Fugaku smugly stated, which made some growl at him. Hey, maybe you should try to treat your wife with a little more respect than an incubator for whatever your shriveled up fires out. She yelled, which made the man glare at her. Looks like someone's a little cranky. Maybe you should have your husband take your spot on this council. Oh, wait, he can't since he's sleeping in a wooden box 6 feet underground. Fugaku shouted at the woman who leaped up from her seat and was about to attack. Silence. Suddenly the entire room went silent and everyone saw the might of the third Hokage, who was fed up with how the meeting was going. He knew that all of the clan heads grew up with each other. He also knew that everyone hated Fugaku and Danzo, but that didn't mean that his time would be wasted by petty arguing. You will be barred from entering this chamber if you cannot act like clan heads and not like petty children. I will not tolerate fighting in this chamber. Do I make myself clear? He yelled at the clan heads, who all nodded their heads. Good, now before I leave, we have to discuss the Chunin who we will be sending to Kirigakure. How many teams are we sending? Shikaku asked the leader who passed out papers to the group. We will be sending 4 teams of 3 and 1 team of 2, Hiruzen said after he took a drag of his pipe. A team of 2? They must be very powerful, Choza pointed out. Yes, they are strong. So strong that I have them favored to win the entire tournament. I just need to pick out a sensei for them. Sarutobi rubbed his chin in deep thought. I can provide them a sensei, Danzo pointed out as he made his presence known. Everyone turned towards the man who made his presence known and narrowed their eyes at him. Danzo merely smirked at them all and passed them a paper with a photo of a man with brown hair and brown eyes. Meet Eiji Kano, Jonin of Konoha. Danzo said, which made Fugaku smirk. Both had a feeling about who was going to be on this team and wanted to get any information they could. While Sarupa looked cool as could be, on the inside he was fuming. He knew that if he declined then it would look suspicious, so he had to accept. Damn Danzo, always messing things up. I will assign them with him, but they will be training with their respective teachers until they are ready to leave for Kiri, Sarutobi said to his rival, who nodded his head. That is reasonable, Danzo agreed, but was inwardly fuming that he couldn't get intel. Alright, well, it seems that this meeting is over. I would like to see Hayashi, Shikaku, and Shibi in my office after this, he said as he got up from the table and left the meeting hall. Sarupa walked into his office and saw that Kakashi, Yugao, Mikoto, and Hitomi were all in there waiting for him. When Kakashi and Yugao saw the Hokage, they immediately bowed, which made the man chuckle. At ease, he said with a wave of his hand. What took you so long? Mikoto asked the group as they walked in and sealed the office. We had some issues in the council meeting today, Hayashi said as he walked over to kiss his wife on the lips. If you count the entire shinobi council arguing with each other like children. You all should be ashamed of yourselves for the way that you acted today, Sarupa yelled, which made everyone drop their heads in shame. It was the most embarrassing meeting I've been a part of, Shibi said as he broke the silence. Yes, Fugaku needed to keep his mouth shut. Mikoto, I'm sorry about the things he said to you and about you. I'm just sorry and I wish I could do more to help you. This whole situation is just such a drag, Shikaku said as he bowed to Mikoto, who smiled kindly at the man. It's okay, Shikaku-kun. He's just an ass and hopefully, things will change, but for the time being, I will be strong for my kids," she said with a kind smile on her face. "Through this meeting is pleasant, why are we here, Hokage-sama?" Shibi asked the man who sighed and sat behind his desk. "Shibi, Shikaku, and Hayashi, you were on Genin team number 3, is that correct?" Sarutobi asked the men, who all nodded their heads. "Who was the person who befriended you 3 at the academy?" "Minato Namikaze." "Why do you ask, Hokage-sama?" Shikaku asked as he eyed the man in front of him. "What I'm about to share with you is labeled as an SS rank secret and must be kept at all costs, is that clear?" Sarutobi asked, which made the 3 men stand straighter. "Hi!" All 3 saluted to the leader, who smirked. "Good, now in that council meeting I mentioned 2 genin that will be taking the Chunin exams. Those kids are none other than Naruto Uzumaki and Hinata Hyuga," Sarutobi said, which made Shikaku look at the man with a raised eyebrow. "Uzumaki? As is Kushina Uzumaki?" he asked the Hokage, who nodded his head in sadness. "This is such a drag. Is there a reason why you kept the son of my best friend a secret? I had a feeling it was him when you brought him on that night. I'm glad that Kakashi and Yuga were able to adopt him though." "Not without jumping through hoops and hurdles," Yuga mumbled, but was silenced by an elbow to the rib from Kakashi. "Yes, Hokage-sama, I too would like to know why he was kept hidden." Shibi reposed as he sat in one of the chairs that were in the office. "I thought that it was a good idea to say that he was the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, but Minato actually wrote for me not to do that. Too bad I read his letter too late. It also was revealed that Naruto has the Sharingan." "How is that?" Minato covered his eyes with the Genjutsu, "didn't he?" Shikaku asked, which made both Mikoto and Hiruzen nod their heads. Minato-kun used a seal on the nape of his neck. He made it after the Chunin exams when he had to fight Fugaku without it. Mikoto explained to the people present, who nodded their heads. "My only question is, who are Minato's parents? There aren't that many people with blonde hair like that here in the village. Along with having the Sharingan, they must have been outside of the village during the start of the Second Great War. Maybe they were a wandering Uchiha who met Jasmine Namikaze," Hayashi asked the man in front of him, who pushed a piece of paper onto the desk. Everyone saw the paper and crowded around to read it. Birth certificate for one, Minato Namikaze Uchiha. Mother, Jasmine Namikaze, age 47 years. Father, Madara Uchiha, age 54 years. Weight at birth, 8.3 pounds. Length at birth, 21 inches. Holy shit, he was Madara's son? Mikoto yelled, which made everyone's sweat drop. "I can see why you hid this," Shikaku said to the old man, who nodded his head. "Yes, not only would it throw the entire village for a loop, but would also have painted a target on Minato's back when he was younger. So now, on top of his parents' legacies, Naruto is the grandson of Dan Uzumaki, who was the heir of Whirlpool, and the entire Uzumaki clan fortune. He is the grandson of Tsunade Senju, who is a legendary Sannin. He is also the grandson of Madara Uchiha, who was one of the strongest shinobi to ever live. But he is also the heir to the entire Namikaze fortune," Sarutobi explained, which made the eyes of everyone present go wide. Even Shibi's eyes were slightly visible from the tops of his glasses. "Hokage-sama, how rich is Naruto?" Hitomi asked the man, who chuckled. "That I actually don't know. He is the heir of a country and 2 clans. Since Tsunade is still alive, she has access to the Senju accounts, but not the Uzumaki accounts. Right before Kushina and Minato died, they calculated that the Uzumaki account had around 7.89 trillion ryu in it. That was what was in the vault that they had access to. Kushina suspected that there was a vault in Yuzu that had a lot more in it. So really, who knows? Add that onto the Namikaze accounts, which Minato found when he went back to his family home in his first year of office. He found that they were worth about 800 billion ryu. This is not including the investments, loans, and companies that have Namikaze funding in them. Then you are looking at trillions of ryu. If Naruto were to ever decide to want interest for the loans that this village owes, it would definitely cripple the economy of this village, but the land of fire in general. 2. Shikaku and Hayashi looked at each other, and then back at the Hokage, who was smiling. Both men expected Naruto to be loaded because of his parents, but to think that he could basically buy the entire village and possibly the entire land of fire was insane. Has Naruto been made aware of these things? Hiyashi asked as he tried to think of ways that he could keep Naruto's influence in his family. No, he has not, but in Minato's will, he states that he wants him to be made aware of it by the time he makes Chunin. He explicitly said, regardless of age. And Hayashi, if you are thinking about ways to get that money, you won't be getting it without Naruto's consent. That money is his and his alone, Sarutobi said, which made the Hyuga clan head frown. And don't even think about any political marriages either, Hitomi said, which shocked the entire room. I want my child to fall in love with him naturally. Yeah, because Kami knows they're destined for each other, Mikoto said with a warm smile on her face. Speaking of Naruto and Hinata, shouldn't you be with them? Hayashi asked, which made the 2 women and elderly man smirk. Are you ready to watch their genin test? Sarutobi asked as he brought out his crystal ball. He placed the ball and gestured for everyone to pull up a chair. Now then, let the test begin. Training Ground 23 on June 23, 52 FK. Naruto and Hinata were enjoying a break from their heavy and demanding training. They had gotten very far in the last few months and were excited to see what they were going to do next. Naruto was slowly increasing his speed and physical strength, while Hinata was learning more and more about the human body and the mind. She was also getting better at using a bow. Naruto-kun, she said as she rested on her back. Yeah, what's up? He asked as he gazed up at the clouds. What's next? Naruto sat up and looked at his friend with a raised eyebrow. They knew that they were training for the Chunin exams that were happening in a few weeks. But after that they didn't know. All they knew was that something was going to happen. He had looked on the old man's desk and saw that there were several job openings for the people who did well in the exams. There were even a few A and BU positions that were applying for requests. Although if it were up to Naruto, he would want to continue studying seals. He had just figured out the 4 trigram sealing formula and was having lots of fun applying it to different things. Well, I guess we would get jobs? He shrugged his shoulders while glancing at Hinata, who frowned. What about the academy? She asked as she looked at her friend, who smiled at her. I'm sure we can think of something when the time comes. We still have 2 months till we have to even begin thinking about our next steps. Naruto reassured the girl, who weakly smiled at him back. But I did have an idea. What is it? She asked as he turned to gaze back up at the clouds. What if we made a store? Hinata was caught off guard by this. She didn't think of Naruto to be the one who came up with the idea for making a corporation or company. What would we sell? Anything. We could make a store that sold literally anything and everything. I was reading about it, and asked Gigi about it, and he said that I could do it. We could make a corporation, he shouted excitedly as he got up and looked at a wide-eyed Hinata. And maybe we should wait till we are older. We are only 4 years old, Naruto-kun, she suggested as she smiled at the boy. Yeah, I guess you're right, Hinata-chan. Man, you're always right. Plus, what would you even name it? She asked as she looked over at her friend. Well, your last name is Hyuga and mine is Uzumaki, so it could be high as Kormp. He shouted with a wide smile on his masked face. I'll like it, she said with a smile on her face. Yay, I'm GLA. Naruto stopped talking and immediately went on alert. He felt a disturbance in the chakra around him and didn't like it at all. He glanced over at Hinata and gave her a small nod. She immediately went on guard and both started looking around. Ka-chan, Ba-chan, did you feel that? Naruto asked his internal parental figures, who both nodded their heads. Yes, Naru-chan. We felt too. Mito responded as she tried to extend her senses to see what was going on. Maybe you should be ready for anything because I don't know what's going on. Naruto nodded his head and pulled out a kuni. He looked at Hinata, who already had her bow in her hand. Suddenly, there was a puff of smoke and a figure appeared. He was around 5 feet 11 inches and had on a tiger mask. Umbu? Naruto immediately thought as he took in the ANBU's appearance and overall stature. So this must have been the disturbance I felt. Naruto Uzumaki and Hinata Hyuga, you have a mission. It is disclosed in the scroll, he said before he vanished in a plume of smoke. Naruto looked at Hinata, who was amazed at the justice that was used. Naruto then proceeded to open the scroll and read its contents aloud. Mission brief. 1. Naruto Uzumaki and Hinata Hyuga are to report to Konoha's East Gate. They are then to go 23 miles away from Konoha and exterminate a bandit camp. There are between 15 and 25 bandits. Upon completion, report to the Hokage for mission debrief. Hiruzen Sarutobi, 3rd Hokage of Konoha. Well, this will be interesting, Naruto said as he rolled up the scroll. We need to kill? Hinata whispered while holding her bow in her hand. She knew that she would have to eventually kill someone, but she didn't think that it would be so early. She thought that all life was precious, so she wanted to heal and help people. Yes, Hinata-chan, it looks like we will have to kill these people, Naruto stated as he held out his hand to take Hinata's. I know that it sounds really bad, and it is, but like Tobirama-sama once said, one must always remember that if one performs service for one's village, that village will return that service tenfold. We got this, and we can get cinnamon buns after, Naruto said with a wide smile on his face. Hinata looked at him and thought about his words for a few minutes. After thinking about it, she realized that this was something that she was going to have to do in her life. I'll have to do this if I want to stay by Naruto-kun's side. I'll do anything and everything to be by his side. I'll do it, she thought to herself. Okay, Naruto-kun, let's do this. She looked at his eyes and they looked like they had a certain fire behind them. Both children had the flames of determination in them and weren't going to give up on anything that was thrown in their way. Both children went to Naruto's apartment and went to gear up for their mission. When they were finished, they made their way to the East Gate where they would depart. Hokage's office. Why is he quoting Tobirama-sama? Shikako asked the group, who shrugged their shoulders. I honestly thought he would become obsessed with the yandamai, but I guess Tobirama-sama works as well, Sarupa said as he lit his pipe to take a drag of it. Wait, has this always been a thing? Mikoto asked as she looked at the small pile of books that were in one of the corners of the office. Well, he found him on his first day here and I've been slowly supplying him with information about him ever since. I don't see the harm in him learning about Tobirama-sama, Hiruzen said as he watched the duo race through the trees at top speeds to get to the bandit camp. So wait, what do you have planned for these two, Hokage-sama? Hisashi asked while leaning back into his chair. Well, I plan to have them 10 miles away from camp. Naruto and Hinata had been sprinting for the past 45 minutes. They were able to pump a large amount of chakra through their legs so that they would be able to reach their destination in a semi-timely manner. Naruto-kun, what's the plan for these bandits that we now have to kill? she whispered into his ear as they landed on a branch. Well, I can sense in a 15 radius, and I just started sensing them, so we are getting closer. It looks like there are around 23 bandits in the camp right now. Hopefully we should be able to take care of them easily, he explained as he started double-checking their supplies. Hinata nodded her head and sighed to herself. She had been in these situations with Naruto before, but this felt different for some reason. She felt like he was in business mode and wouldn't be cracking jokes like he normally would. He even felt a little different as well, but that didn't change the fact that he was still Naruto. The duo slowly eased their pace as they made it closer and closer to the camp. Naruto had sent out around 4 different clones which were hinged into different animals and bugs so that he could get a better sense of the area. Once they were right on top of the camp, they stopped and looked at each other. I can take the ones that are on the right side of the camp and you can take the ones on the left side, and Naruto-kun, Hinata suggested to her blonde teammate, who nodded his head. We'll meet back here once we are finished. Be safe, Hinata-chan, he whispered to the girl, who nodded her head, though if he were to look closely, he would have been able to see a slight blush on her cheek. Hokage's office. You've lost it, old man. If one were to look at the current state of the Hokage's office, they would see one Kakashi Hatake restraining his current life partner, Yugao Yuzuki. They would also see Hayashi Hyuga calming down his now fuming wife. I have a very good explanation for why I did what I did, he said quickly as he surveyed the room. Oh really? Shikaka asked as he looked from the crystal ball to the leader's face. Well, now would be a really good time to say it. I wanted to test them. If I just gave them the normal genin test, it wouldn't have shown anything. I needed to see what they could actually do in a combat situation. Don't worry, it's just a simple C-rank mission, he explained to the group, who all relented and calmed down enough to continue watching the test take place. You just want to see them go 100% all out, don't you? Mikoto said to the Hokage, who nodded his head. Well, let me tell you, there's some stuff that we don't even know. Excuse me? He asked with wide eyes. Yup, sometimes Naruto or Hinata would come up with situations or plans when we aren't around. I only know it's happened because I find them asleep on the training field sometimes, Hitomi explained to the group, who all looked quite shocked. Bet that as it may, Shibi said while looking at the old man with a level-headed stare. They will be killing as 4-year-olds. Kakashi-san, you didn't make your first kill until you were something like 6 or 7. Is that correct? Yes, that is correct, and that brings up another good point. These are still children we are talking about. I would feel better if we had them talk to Inochi or his wife as a way to make sure that they come out of this sane in the end, Kakashi suggested, which made the others nod their heads in agreement. I had planned for that to happen in the following days depending on the success of this mission, Kakashi-kun, Hiruzen said with a smile on his face. He would have hated to damage not only his new apprentice, but also the son of his successor more than he already had. Alright, Yugao said as she tried to get everyone's attention back on the crystal ball that was in front of them. It looks like the main event is just about to start. 50 meters from camp, Naruto and Hinata had just split up and went to their respective sides of the camp. He slowly made his way, walking on the ground and hiding in the shadows so that he was undetectable and unnoticed. He looked up and saw that he was about to enter the camp, so he jumped up and landed on a tree branch. Any suggestions on how I should do this? He mentally asked the residents of his head. Well, you need to kill them without letting them know you are here, Akari bluntly said as she summed up the situation. You will probably need to kill them silently with a kunai. Hinata has her bow, so she has range to her advantage. You'll need to get up close and personal. I agree with your mother, Guppy. You'll also need to make sure that none of them escape, so I suggest setting up a barrier around the camp so that no one gets in or out, Mito suggested to her grandson, who nodded his head in agreement. Wait, I thought that you guys weren't going to help me on missions, he emptily shouted at the two beings who gained tick marks over their eyebrows. We decided that we would give you advice only if you asked or if we thought the situation needed it, Akari explained to the boy, who nodded his head. Okay. That works for me, he thought as he jumped outside of a yellow tent. He slowly approached the tent flaps and made his way inside. He looked around and found one of the bandits was facing away from him. Naruto looked up and frowned. He was too short to go for a strike to the neck, so he had to improvise. He snuck up behind the man and launched a strike directly at his heart. Naruto, who after countless hours of studying and reading, now had all the locations of the body ingrained into his head. The bandit didn't even scream as he fell into the grips of death. Naruto jumped out of the way and tried to make the man's descent silent, but ultimately failed when the man landed with a soft thud on the ground. At the same time, Hinata had just taken out 2 people from a tree. She used her Byakugan and her bow to shoot them in the head from afar. That way she was still getting the job done, but wasn't getting up close and personal. Though that wasn't to say that it didn't have the same effect. Killing was still killing, even if it was from afar. Back with Naruto, he looked around and exited the tent only to come face to face with another bandit. Hey, what are you? Oyui, we have intruders in the camp. Naruto immediately launched a kunai at the man's throat, which permanently silenced the man. He then kicked him in the knees and stabbed him in the eyes, but it was too late. Suddenly, an alarm went off which signaled to all that someone had in fact heard what the man said. This also caused both Naruto and Hinata to go on high alert, as now everyone in the camp would know that they were there. Well, poop, Naruto stated quietly as he sprinted through the camp. He immediately turned on his eyes, and started to dodge strikes from swords and clubs. He jumped up into the air and started throwing shuriken at the bandits. "Well boys, looks like we have a little boy that we get to torture," one of the bandits shouted as he and a few others started sprinting towards Naruto. The boy then immediately started going through hand seals and landed on the ram seal. Lightning style, lightning rain. Suddenly, bolts of lightning started raining down from above all of the bandits' heads. The jutsus caused the ground to be littered with holes and scolding corpses. Naruto looked around and felt the chakra signatures of 7 other men. He then started going through more hand seals and launched a gale of wind towards them. Wind style, wind launcher. The 7 men that were coming towards the blonde child were ideally thrown back into trees or rocks where their backs were crushed. Naruto then immediately ran over and started throwing kunai and shuriken at the bodies to make sure that they were dead. He then immediately looked up and saw that 4 more bandits were about to throw rocks at him. He sprinted and started to dodge the income boulders and went through more seals. Fire style, giant fireball. The medium-sized fireballs launched out of Naruto's mouth were launched directly at the bandits who tried to dodge them. 2 of the bandits were able to dodge them only to be hit in the head by shuriken which Naruto had thrown at the bandits. The other didn't even need the shuriken since he is already dead. Naruto then looked around to try and find Hinata, but sensed that something was coming towards him. He then dropped to the floor as a large chain was launched towards him. It would seem like I have some pests that I need to exterminate. Naruto jumped to his feet and turned around to see a 6-foot-tall man with a large scar covering his entire face. He wore a green and black overcoat with a slashed Konoha headband brandished on his left bicep. He wore bulky NBU-style pants and brown combat boots. Naruto didn't have to look because he felt the presence of Hinata drop down next to him. He also didn't have to look to tell that she was very much shaken with the amount of dead bodies she was around right now. "You're Ramen Jujuro, Birank Konha Nuknin. What are you doing here?" Naruto shouted at the man who smirked at the 2 children standing in front of him. Naruto immediately started going through sign language next to him so that Hinata could see it. Battle Format 5. She immediately went behind Naruto and started drawing back her bow. She knew exactly what he wanted to do and she knew exactly what she needed to do in order to get the desired result. Naruto then started crouching low to the ground and grabbed numerous shuriken. "Jujuro, you are a Nuknin of Konoha, meaning that you abandoned the village. Since your bingo book entry states that you are to be reentered dead or alive, we will not hesitate to kill you," Naruto stated in the most serious voice he could muster. He was actually quite surprised that he didn't stutter due to how terrified he was. He knew that while it was a long shot, both he and Hinata had the smallest chance against the large man. Naruto knew that Jujuro was a man who relied on earth chakra a lot. In fact, that's all the man knew besides the 3 basic techniques. Naruto also knew that both he and Hinata had pretty much all 5 elements covered, since he knew justice for all the elements, and was strong in lightning release, water release, and wind release. Naruto also knew that Hinata was there who had an even higher water affinity than he did. She was also quite good at lightning release and some earth release techniques. The only problem that Naruto figured they would have was their lack of experience. "Please, what could a bunch of children do to me?" he arrogantly asked as he got into a stance for taijutsu. "Alright," Naruto said as he drew out a shuriken in his hands. "You asked for it." With those words said, Naruto took off towards Jujuro who had an ever-present smirk on his face the entire time. Hokage's office. Shit! Everyone looked at the old man with great amounts of worry. Both Kakashi and Yugao knew who the man Naruto and Hinata were facing up against but the others didn't. "If I may ask Hokage-sama," Shibi asked as he looked at the crystal ball with confusion. "Who is that man they are fighting against, and why are you so worried?" "That is Ramen Jujuro. He is a B-rank criminal like Naruto said and is in the bingo book," Sarutobi said, which made everyone's eyes widen. "Wait, so he was right?" Mikoto shouted as he looked at the old man who nodded his head. "Mikoto-chan, what are you talking about?" Shikaka asked as he looked at the woman with a raised eyebrow. "A couple of months ago, Naruto came running to me asking for me to sign his copy of the bingo book. I was confused because I had been retired for 5 years and the updated copy wouldn't have me in it. So I asked him about it, and he said that the Hokage gave him the legacy bingo book which every ninja ever put into the bingo book ever. I didn't believe him so I went to the Hokage and he said that he didn't know anything about it." She explained to everyone who nodded their heads. "I'm not too worried about them." Everyone turned to Kakashi who had shrugged the man off. He then went on to explain why. "I'm sure that Naruto has a plan. He is like his father, he plans for everything. He has a notebook full of contingency plans in battle so I'm sure he knows what he's doing. Plus, I'm sure that having memorized the entire bingo book, he knows that Jujuro is a heavy earth user. Naruto and Hinata are very unique, they have all the elements covered in sheer power alone. With Naruto having high affinities for 3 and knowing all 5 and Hinata having a huge affinity for 2 and knowing 5, I have full confidence that they can pull this out. It will, however, be a very close fight. I hope you are right, or else you're going to be finding a new place to sleep very soon," Yugao said with gritted teeth to her roommate who I smiled at her. At camp, Naruto launched himself at the mountain of a man and quickly started moving in a strange zigzag formation. In between his body, Hinata would rapidly launch arrows laced with lightning chakra. This caused Chijiro to focus double on the arrows that were coming towards him and forget about the small boy that was now about to kick him in the knees. Chijiro jumped back and started going through hand seals and launched several earth spikes at the boy. Earth style, spikes of the underworld. Naruto and Hinata immediately jumped into the trees and started going through their own hand seals. Water style, submersion. Lightning style, lightning tag. Suddenly water began to flood the area. Hinata had long since realized that she had the rare ability to take water from the air. She also noticed that there was a large area nearly half a mile away. While she was shooting the bandits, she had some clones move large amounts of water towards her in case she needed it. While the water was flooding the area, a small amount of lightning was making its way towards the large man and was targeting him. Chijiro had to move around in order to get away from the electricity but found that it was quite difficult to do due to the water surrounding the area. Earth style, raising slab. Suddenly a large slab of rock formed from out of the ground, causing the water to displace and form waves. Naruto, thinking fast, formed a clone to make a rock wall while he and Hinata started trying to force the water back. Water style, water dragon. Water style, water vortex. Out of thin air, a large cyclone of water started to form. If one were to look closely at the vortex, one could see a water dragon swimming around it. The vortex and the dragon immediately target Chijiro, who was still on his rock slab. Naruto, with a smirk on his face, went through one final set of hand seals and slammed his hands on the ground. Hinata, you're gonna want to jump. She immediately complied and leaped to a nearby tree to watch what her friend was going to try and accomplish. Lightning style, sonic pulse. Naruto sent a large amount of lightning through the already wet ground and newly fried the entire area. That also caused the water dragon vortex to be surging with electricity, making it even more dangerous. Chijiro's eyes widened as he went through seals and shouted Earth Dome, but he was too late as the giant monstrosity that the two 4-year-olds were able to create steamrolled him while also drowning him and electrocuting him. Naruto looked up and panted as he surveyed the damage that he and Hinata's justice was able to cause. He smiled as he walked towards Chijiro's unconscious form. He looked at Hinata, who was about ready to pass out from using several high-level techniques. Let's go home. Hokage's office. Silence rang through the entire office as they watched what the two children were able to accomplish. Hitomi and Mikoto had wide smiles on their faces as they watched all their training pay off. Hayashi, Shibi, and Shikaka had slack jaws at what the children were able to do. Sure, they had known that they were powerful, but to passively make a combined A to low S rank justice with 3 mid-B range ones was insane, let alone after going all out in a fight with someone 5 times their age. It was truly insane. I told you they would be fine, Kakashi said with an obvious smirk on his masked face. Everyone's sweat dropped at what the masked man said, which made Kakashi even happier. After a few minutes, Hiruzen broke the silence. So, what would you rate them, everyone? He asked as he took out a piece of paper to write down the scores. October 10th, not only were they able to complete the mission, but they were able to combat a Nuke and bring him back. Definitely worthy of Chunin. Shikaka commented first. I agree, they are definitely Chunin material, Hayashi stated with a smile on his face. Naruto could have ended the fight earlier, and he got caught when he was doing the initial mission. I rated a 9 out of 10, Kakashi explained as he watched the two run back to Konoha. October 10th, sometimes a mission doesn't go as planned. Both were able to effectively work and plan around the problems, and were able to complete everything, Mikoto said with a smile on her face. 9.5 out of 10, both performed fantastically, but logic would tell you to run away from an opponent that is much stronger than you. If it hadn't been for Jujuro-san's sheer stupidity, he would have won easily. Shibi commented much to everyone's ire. October 10th, did you see that final jutsu? Yugao shouted with a wide smile on her face. I also rate them 10 out of 10, Hitomi said with a smile. Well, then it will be said that Naruto Uzumaki and Hinata Hyuga will be promoted to Genin of Konoha, Hiruzen said with a wide smile on his face. After 2 hours of waiting, the door to the office opened, and in walked Naruto and Hinata dragging the unconscious body of Ramen Jijuro. Naruto weakly smiled at the group, but not before sprinting to a trash can in the room and vomiting. Hinata did the same then, and vomited in a trash can that was on the other side of the room. Both then proceed to pass out due to stress and collapse onto the floor. Mikoto and Hitomi immediately ran to the children and held them close. Hiruzen sighed as he wrote to schedule both Naruto and Hinata to therapy with the wife of Inochi. Transport them to the Hyuga compound, we will inform them there, Sarutobi said as he stood up to look at the windows behind him. Hi Hokage-sama, everyone said before disappearing to the compound. Sarutobi sighed to himself as he looked at Minato's stone head. I hope you're proud of your son Minato, because I sure am, he said before also disappearing to wait for Konoha's newest genin to wake up. Middle of downtown Konoha on July 2, 52 AFK. Inoichi and Shikaka were walking to their respective buildings when they decided that they needed answers. Inoichi had just reread the report that he had to submit from when he was giving Naruto and Hinata their psych exams for active duty, and he was growing. The more he thought about it, the more Inoichi felt uneasy about everything happening to the frown as he thought about the therapy session that he had to have with both of the children immediately after the mission. He remembered that as for Naruto, he was very intelligent. He was able to perform many complex tasks that were meant for children 2x his age. He tested the boy's IQ, which was recorded at a staggering 149, which put him in the running for the highest IQ in the entire village. Inoichi found out lots of things about the poor boy. He found out that Naruto suffered from early stages of separation anxiety and attachment disorder. Hinata, on the other hand, was just mentally scared due to having to kill at such a young age. Like Naruto, she was incredibly smart, having an IQ of around 125. She knew that what she had done wasn't a good thing, but she also understood that what she had done wasn't a bad thing either. She recognized that what she did was a thing that would be helping keep people safe. Inoichi had recognized that Hinata was doing much better mentally than Naruto, but he also found out that the two children had a deep connection with each other. He discovered that they both thrived off of each other in different ways. Hinata would use Naruto as her pillar of strength, and Naruto would use Hinata as stability. He also realized that Naruto was very protective over his friends and especially Hinata. Man, I just don't understand why he's doing this. The Yamanaka clan head asked as he drank his cup of tea. The blonde man hadn't even noticed the small flask that his Nara friend was pouring into his own cup of coffee. I can't figure it out either. All of this is so damn troublesome. Shikaku groaned as he put the flask back into his pocket. He had been thinking about the situation nonstop ever since he heard about it a week and a half ago. I mean, I knew our forces were strained, but 4-year-olds? Our forces aren't that bad, right? The blonde-haired man tentatively asked as he took a sip of his drink. Do you want the short answer or the long answer? Shikaku asked the man with a raised eyebrow. If I'm being honest with you, we still haven't recovered from the Second Great War. What do you mean? That war ended over 25 years ago. Yes, but we weren't able to recover numbers quick enough. Shikaku immediately turned around and started walking in the opposite direction. Let's go. Inoichi raised an eyebrow at the man and immediately did the same thing. Where are we going? He whispered to his friend, who started to follow him out. The Hokage, Naruto's apartment. Naruto shot up from his bed and collapsed onto the floor. He hadn't meant to fall out of his bed. He looked around and tried to sense his older siblings but couldn't feel them. They must be on another mission. He mused to himself as he grabbed the things that he needed in order to get started on his day. He looked around his room and found a dark blue shirt with black pants. He grabbed them and walked into the bathroom so that he could shower and change. Good morning, everyone, he thought to himself while preparing his bath. Good morning, Guppy, Mito replied as she fixed herself her morning cup of coffee. She usually was the first one to wake up since she was the most used to being around children. I'm guessing Ka-chan is still asleep? He asked while lathering the soap on his body. You would be right. It seems like your mother isn't much of a morning person when she doesn't have to be, Mito said as she sipped her coffee and turned on the TV that allowed her to see outside of the seal. Especially after what she and Cammy did last night. She grumbled to herself while taking another swig of the bean juice. Oh well, usually Ka-chan gets up at like 10 a.m. anyway, so I get to spend time with my favorite Ba-chan, Naruto thought as he got out of the bath and dried himself off. He then went to the sink and hopped onto the step stool so that he could reach the skink. Ah, Guppy, that's so sweet of you, Naruto smiled while brushing his teeth. Once his personal hygiene was completed, he got dressed and walked into the kitchen. He looked around and didn't see his other mother figure there cooking him breakfast. Where's Mikoto Ka-chan? He frowned to himself as he reached out his senses and tried to locate her. His frown deepened as he felt her chakra on the other side of the village. He also noticed that it was much duller than it normally was. Mito noticed where he was looking and immediately frowned. He's not going to try and go there, is he? He's a senju for Kami's sake. I'd be surprised if he even gets let in because I think you need to flash the Sharingan to enter the district, she thought as she tried to figure out what her grandson was thinking. Naruto thought to himself, and then came up with an idea. He started doing hand seals and then at the end bit his thumb. He then slammed his hands onto the ground. Kuchios no Jutsu, Kitsune. Suddenly a plume of smoke erupted throughout the room. When the smoke started to disperse, a cat-sized black fox appeared. He had a long tail with a red tip and very short fur. Yo Naruto, what's happening? Shizumi! What's going on? Naruto shouted as he ran to pet the fox, who purred slightly. Naruto had babysat for his kits and they were on very good terms at the moment. Shizumi was a fox who specialized in recon and recovery. I do need your help, the 4-year-old blonde said as he stopped petting the fox. Shizumi immediately got serious and looked at his summoner with hard eyes. I need you to find Mikoto Ka-chan. She's on the other side of the village, and her chakra is very dull. Naruto explained the situation to the fox, who nodded his head. Do you have any way to track her? He asked as he looked around the apartment for anything that could be hers. Well, there is one thing. Naruto immediately blushed and started walking towards his bedroom. He then reached under his bed and pulled out a large black bra that belonged to Mikoto. Naruto's seal. Mito was enjoying her coffee, eggs, and bacon that morning. She already figured out that he was going to send a fox to try and figure out what was wrong with Mikoto, so she didn't have to worry about anything. However, all that changed when she took a glance at the TV. She then proceeded to spit out her coffee and started choking on her food. What the fuck? She yelled as she did a double take at the TV. Akari, who had been woken up by Mito's scream, ran down the stairs of the house and got into a fighting stance. What's going with the FUCK? She looked at the TV and saw Naruto hand the bra to the fox, who noticeably had a blush. Whose bra is that? Yugao's chakra stores aren't that big yet, so her shouldn't be that big, nor had puberty hit her like a truck yet. The fox spirit yelled, which made Mito chuckle. It's Mikoto's. She's the only one with the chakra that could possibly warrant having such massive boobs. He hasn't met Tsunade and Hitomi hasn't been in the apartment, she said with a smile as she got herself under control. It was almost common knowledge among kunoichi that the larger your boobs were, the more chakra you had. Not to say that women with smaller boobs weren't powerful. It was just that almost every legendary kunoichi had very large boobs. But why does he have it? Akari shouted while making her way to the kitchen to make herself some breakfast. She probably left it here and Naruto found it. He doesn't know what it is or what it holds, right? Mito nervously chuckled to herself as she resumed watching the TV. Outside the seal, Naruto had just sent Shizum to figure out where Mikoto was, so started to meditate to work on his senses. He had read from books that Taburmama was a very good sensor, as was Mito. He learned that the more he focused, the more he could sense, and the more in-depth it would become. While Naruto was meditating, Shizum was running through the village trying to find Mikoto. He was following her scent, and when he reached a large gated district, his face furrowed. This is a district that is walled off. Why would this lady be here? He shook his head and jumped over the fence, and slowly started walking towards the house that she was in. The house itself was very large. It had stone walls around 2 feet tall surrounding the property. There were multiple water fountains and gardens boarded up the walls and the house. The house itself was a large stone cottage mansion that had multiple floors and windows. There was a mailbox near the door and smoke billowing out of the chimney. Shizum hopped onto one of the ledges and looked into the window to see if he could find the woman who Naruto was searching for, but couldn't find her. He walked around the building and saw an open window with a woman cooking in front of it. Shizum immediately jumped into the windowsill and looked at the women. Mikoto was having a very rough morning. She had to wake up at the crack of dawn in order to take care of her maiden duties, which consisted of many degrading things. She had to run Fugaku's bath, cook, clean, wake up the children, and lots of other things. She also had to do all of this while wearing a very short skirt, thigh-high socks, a girdle, 8-inch high heels, and a blouse designed to reveal lots of skin. 2. She sighed to herself as she stood in front of the stove cooking breakfast for her family, but something caught her eye. She glanced over and saw a black fox with green eyes staring at her. Foxes don't live over here. Wait, foxes? We killed the fox population years Naruto should I forgot Naruto. She immediately turned around to find a plume of smoke rising from where the fox was. She looked down at herself and sighed. Well, today just got a lot more interesting. Hokage's office. Sarutobi was reading documents when he heard someone knock on his door. He sighed to himself as he put the documents down and prayed that there wasn't another crisis happening. Enter, he shouted as he looked at the door. Shikaku and Inoichi walked into the room and immediately bowed to their leader. Hokage-sama, both men said, which made the old man chuckled. At ease, Inoichi-kun and Shikaku-kun. What can I do for you right now? I don't recall requesting you here. Sarutobi glanced at his schedule to make sure that he wasn't going senile and actually forgot the meeting. Hokage-sama, we came here because we had some questions about some new recruits to our ranks, Inoichi said as he handed the Hokage his report. Both men were signaled to sit, and the office was sealed. But first, when did we get a black fox population in the village? Sarutobi raised an eyebrow as he looked at the man in front of him. I was unaware that we even had any foxes living in this village currently. I thought the villagers killed them all. Sarutobi responded while not taking his eyes off of the report in front of him. We saw one running through the village. It looked to be heading towards the Uchiha compound. Maybe it lives there. Shikako reasoned while looking around the office. Wait, where's your apprentice? Usually, there are 5 of them here to help you with the paperwork. Oh, I gave Naruto a week off after his test. He returns to work tomorrow. Hiruzen said as he glanced around the office and noticed how quiet it actually was. Usually, both he and Naruto were talking about the documents, or he was teaching the boy politics. Speaking of Naruto, we had some questions, Inoichi said as he looked at the Sandim who looked at him back. Why are you doing this? Why are you putting 2 4-year-olds into the forces? Well, both are far too advanced to be in the academy. They have the skills to be chunin, and we need forces. Hiruzen answered the blonde who glared at him. That's not what he asked Sandim-sama. He asked why in general. Are our forces that bad off that we need children taking missions and killing? Doesn't this go against everything that Shadame-sama wanted? Sarutobi sighed to himself as he glanced at both Minato and Hashirama's pictures on the wall in front of him. He knew that it did indeed go against everything that the first Hokage would have ever wanted. He knew that Hashirama would not be happy, but he knew that he would understand why he had to do it. Do you know what happened in the Second Great Shinobi War? He asked the clan heads who nodded their heads. Well, how many years passed from the First War to the Second War? I think it was 3 years that passed, Shikako answered, which earned him a nod from the Hokage. Yes, you are correct. The First War ended in June 20th FK, 3. I became Hokage in 16 FK and the peace treaty was how I celebrated my first 3 years of reign. The Second War then started 3 years later when Iwa Nin violated the treaty and killed Suna Shinobi in Wind Country. This then led to an escalation in aggression between Suna and IWA. It also didn't help that Yuzu was being their usual selves. They were sending aid to Suna per the alliance that Suna, Yuzu, and Konoha had. Sarutobi explained, which earned nods for both the men sitting in front of him. He was about to continue explaining the Second Great Ninja War when he was stopped by Inuchi. That's great, but that doesn't answer my question, Inoichi said as he smiled slightly. The Sandaime looked at the man and then facepalmed. I went into a history lesson, didn't I? The old man sighed to himself as he lightly smacked himself in the head. Sorry, I'm not called the professor for nothing. He chuckled to himself before he actually answered the question. Inoichi-kun, we desperately need the manpower. We've fought 3 that have in total lasted 21 years. We have only had a total of 17 years in total to rest and repopulate. The Sandaime explained, which made the 2 men's eyes widen. We had the years from June 20 FK to 23 FK, which was in between the First and Second Wars. We've had the years 31 FK to 39 FK, which was in between the Second and Third Wars. Then you have from the end of the Third War to now, which has been 6 years. The Sandaime paused for a second to let that information sink into the heads of Inoichi and Shikaku. The silence didn't last very long as the old man continued talking. 4. Inoichi-kun, our village has been around for 51 years, and while 30 of those years have been filled with peace, you need to subtract the years before the First War. Subtract those 13 years from the 30, and you have 17 years of total peace since the end of the First War. That's 33% of the total lifespan of the village, where the amount of time we've been at war is 41% of the total lifespan. Now, the answer to your question is not a simple one. It involves the military standing of not only Konoha but the other 4 great nations. Sarutobi placed some tobacco into his pipe and lit it. He took a few drags from it and sighed. You see, when I tried to convince Mikoto and Hitomi to train them, I cited how we were losing the Chunin exams, which was true, but it's a much larger issue of Konoha simply not having enough high-quality ninjas. Don't get me wrong, our forces are talented, but due to the deaths of not only Minato and Kushina, but Mikoto now not being allowed to be a ninja due to the Uchiha clan, Tsunade being in isolation, Hitomi retiring to have kids, and Jiraiya being Kami knows where the number of AS rank ninja we currently have is dangerously low. We currently have 3 S rank ninjas in the entire village. We have me, Jiraiya, and Tsunade. 2 of them are out of the village and I am a 71-year-old man. We for all intent and purposes have 0 S rank ninjas and 14 to 16 A rank ninjas depending on who you ask. I mean, look at Shursui and Itachi. Both were born during the Third War and we put them into the accelerated academy classes. Shursui is a 9 right now and just became a Chunin. Itachi is 7 and was the only Chunin out of the last batch. Hinata and Naruto have the most potential I've ever seen in my life. I have never seen 2 people that powerful ever. That's why they are ninjas. If they show the world that we have ninjas like that, it will give the world the impression that we are training our children to fight like that, and it can give us more time to repopulate our numbers. Shikaku deduced as he rubbed his temples. You're using them to buy the village time. You know something that we don't. What is it? He asked the elderly man who pulled out an old report from Jiraiya from the Third War. He then handed it to the 2 people sitting in front of him. This is a report from Jiraiya right before the Battle of Nakamoto Pass, more commonly known as the battle that ended the Third Great War. The battle where Minato single-handedly killed 4,000 IWA shinobi with the Haraishin no Jutsu. Inochi interrupted, which got him a glare from Sarutobi. Yes, this is a report that Jiraiya managed to get. It talks about the total number of ninja that IWA had at the ready. It says that there were 80,000 ninjas ready to invade Fire Country and by extension here. Sarutobi said in a grave tone that made both men's faces grow pale. At that time, we would have had Genin and some Chunin guarding the village. If you want numbers, that would have been 5,500 Genin and Chunin. We would have been slaughtered. Most of our Jonin were out in the land of hot springs or the land of frost defending for the incoming army from Cloud or were on our eastern and northern border. IWA would have totally steamrolled over our forces and Konoha would have crumbled. If it weren't for Minato killing 5% of their total invasion force, we would all be dead. Now the problem with that is that now Minato needed to keep being alive to still be a deterrent for the rest of the world. But with the Nine Tails attack killing not only Minato but also Kushina, we don't have our deterrents. This means that since IWA and Kumo respectively have more troops than us, they could start a 4th Great War and win. Shikaku figured as he pulled out his flask and took a drink. This is troublesome, so fucking troublesome. He grumbled, which made the old man laugh. You would be right, Shikaku-kun, he said with a smile. But they are 4-year-olds. Couldn't Kakashi Yugao, or anyone become famous? Inoichi shouted at the man who sighed. Yes, but right now we have a guaranteed deterrent. Essentially we have 3 options. We have this one. We have given them to Danzo to train like he did his route, which thank Kami I forced him to disband. 5. Or we could all be dead or POW of IWA. Take your pick. I know I would want them to be both loyal to Konoha and have emotions, so I picked the first one. Hiruzen said, which got nods of understanding from both men. I understand why you did it, Hokage-sama. I'm just worried about them. They won't be in the academy, they won't have friends their own age. Hell, the village still doesn't like Naruto at all. He only has Yugao, Kakashi, Mikoto, and the Hyugas, not to mention the separation anxiety and other trauma that's going through. Inoichi, what are you? Sarutobi asked with a small smirk on his face. Excuse me, Hokage-sama? What are you? What are your titles? Well, I am clan head, head of torture and interrogation, part of the Inoshikacho. I am a husband, I am a father. Focus on that last one for a second. You're a father, meaning that you have a child who just so happens to be the same age as both Naruto and Hinata. What can you do to help Naruto and Hinata? Sarutobi asked dramatically and reveled in how confused Inoichi was. He means that we can introduce our kids to Naruto and Hinata and have them be friends. In fact, I'm sure they would all get along because we got along. Everyone except for Fugaku's kids. Shikaku explained, which made the blonde Yamanaka face palm. Oh, I guess I didn't think of that, Inoichi said, which made everyone else sweat drop. Well, if that's all of your questions, then I must be getting back to work. I don't have Naruto here to help me with them. Sarutobi chuckled to himself as he moved the documents back onto his desk. You know, I wonder what he's doing right now, the Hokage wondered to himself as the two clan heads bowed to exit his office. Naruto's apartment. She's where? Naruto asked as he put on his mask and grabbed his ninja pouch. He had been meditating during the time that Shizumi was out searching for Mikoto. Dude, she's in some house in a walled-off district of the village. It's like a 20-minute walk from here, Shizumi explained while eating a piece of meat that Naruto left out for him. Alright, looks like I'm gonna be practicing this new jutsu that I learned. It's called the Shunshin. The blonde child shouted as he waved to the fox who yipped back at him. Naruto locked the doors and windows to make sure that no one could get into the apartment. He then formed the ram hand seal and disappeared from the apartment in a cloud of smoke. He then reappeared on the street facing the Hokage Tower. Hey, do you guys know how to get to where she is? Naruto asked as he started walking down the street. Well, from here you would go to the east of the village, and you should start to see the walls of the Uchiha compound, Mito explained as she started knitting a scarf. Okay. Naruto started running towards the east of the village, and after a few minutes, he not only felt Mikoto's chakra getting closer, he also saw a wall getting closer and closer to him. I wonder why this place has a giant wall around it. He wondered to himself as he ran closer and closer to the wall. He finally reached the wall and realized that he would have to get over it somehow. He started walking around until he found a gate. It was guarded by two yukayas with their eyes ablaze. Good morning, Naruto kindly said to the two guards. Both of them looked at each other and at the blonde. Wait, isn't he the demon? One of the guards asked. The other shrugged his shoulder and bent down to look at the kid. He just looks like a kid to me. What are you here for, kid? The guard looked at Naruto, who smiled at him. I'm looking for Mikoto Uchiha, Naruto said to the guard, who nodded his head. Oh well, she's in the big house that is at the end of the street. Just keep going straight and you'll find it, the kind guard explained to Naruto, who nodded his head and ran into the district. Hey, why did you let him in? The first guard asked the man. He's a good kid. I don't know what the village has against him, he explained, which made the guard pause for a second. Yeah, I guess you're right. While Naruto was running through the district, he accidentally made a turn and got lost. He was running and didn't see where he was going and accidentally bumped into someone. Oof, I'm sorry, Nichan. Naruto apologized to the young teen he accidentally bumped into. Shursui was walking to the market to pick up some food from the marketplace. He had to meet his team of Chunin in order to get their mission for the day when he bumped into a small blonde kid. Huh, that kid looks like Minato Nichan. Hey kid, what's your name? Oh, Naruto Nichan. Naruto slowly backed away from Shursui, who was looking at him curiously. He didn't like the look he was getting from the kid. Naruto backed away and started running towards Mikoto's chakra signature. He's like a skittish Minato Nichan. I'll ask Mikoto Nechan about it later, he thought to himself as he walked away towards the market, where he was originally going. Alright, she's getting closer to me, Naruto thought as he ran towards a large stone mansion. It took a few more minutes, but he finally reached the dark brown door. He walked up to the doors. Mikoto was just finishing up making breakfast when she heard a knock at the door. She raised an eyebrow and made sure she wasn't expecting anyone. Then she remembered the fox that was there, and realized that it was probably Naruto. Oh no, he's going to see me like this. I don't want him seeing me like this. She tried to find something to cover up, but then her worst nightmare occurred. Women, get the damn door! Fugaku yelled from his study. Mikoto sighed to herself. She now had to answer the door wearing what ridiculous getup. She walked to the door and opened it. Her heart leapt when she saw Naruto standing there with a bright smile on his face. Good morning, Mikoto Ka-chan, Naruto shouted, which made Mikoto smile even more. Good morning, Naru-chan. What are you doing here? She asked the small child as she bent down to give the boy a hug. I didn't see you this morning, so I went to find you, Naruto explained, but was muffled by the large soft pillows of Mikoto's chest. What did you say, honey? She asked as she moved his head out of her chest. I said I went to find you when I didn't see you today, he repeated as she caught his breath. Oh honey, you didn't need to do that. I would have gone to see you. But I'm happy that you did. She smiled warmly at the boy, who right now was the light in her dark world. Where's my food, you stupid bitch? Naruto's head snapped at the noise and his eyes went from round to slits as he tried to find the source. Mikoto also noticed that his ears lightly wiggled when he heard it. So his senses are those of a fox or cat, interesting. I'm sorry Naruto-kun, that was my husband. She explained to the child who narrowed his eyes. I don't like him, he whispered to the women who held him close. Sometimes I don't like him either, she whispered back as she ushered him inside. Do you want to stay for breakfast? She asked in a normal tone, but her eyes said she was pleading for him to stay, eat with her kit. She's had a rough day. Akari said to the child who nodded his head. Sure. I would love to eat with you. He smiled at her, and she nodded her head. Follow me. She grabbed his hand and lightly pulled him through the many hallways. Naruto looked around and noticed all of the paintings of male Uchihas. He also noticed how dark it was inside of the house. If it weren't for his eyes, he wouldn't have been able to see very well. When they finally reached the dining room, Mikoto pulled Naruto aside and spoke with him. Before we go in there, you can't call me Ka-chan. No matter how much you want to, you can't do it. She whispered to him. He could tell that she was serious, so he nodded his head. What took you so damn long? Fugaka asked as he sat at the head of the table with a newspaper in his hand. Yeah. A small black-haired boy yelled at his mother. He looked to be around Naruto's age. He was 3 feet 4 inches and had jet black eyes. He was sitting on the left side of the table, while an older boy with long black hair, and the same eyes was sitting on the right side of the table. I'm sorry Fugaka-sama, Sasuke-sama. I was answering the door and letting in our guest. Mikoto explained while she bowed to Fugaku, who nodded his head. After he took in what she actually said, he looked up and glared at her. Guest? I don't recall inviting anyone to dine with us, nor do I recall giving you the power to invite anyone over. Who is the guest? He snarled at the women, which made Naruto's blood boil slightly. Forgive me, Fugaku-sama. I have overstepped my boundaries. Mikoto replied while bowing again. I guess you will need to be punished later on. Fugaku offhandedly commented as he looked towards the door to see Naruto standing there. Wench, you brought the demon into our house? He yelled as he slapped Mikoto across the face. The older boy scowled at the man while Sasuke looked at his father with pure elation. Forgive me, Fugaku-sama, but I am not a demon. Naruto diplomatically stated. He was trying to do his best Sarutobi impression so that he wouldn't get yelled at. Alright, I'm dealing with Fugaku. Meaning I need to be on my A-game, as Gigi puts it. He thought to himself, wouldn't it be rude if you didn't welcome the apprentice of the Hokage for breakfast? Mikoto watched the scene with interest. She almost mistook Naruto for his dad Minato with the way his speech pattern totally switched. She could tell he was trying to mimic Sarutobi, but so far he was actually doing a good job. You got this, Naruto-kun. She praised the boy while she went to get breakfast set up. Fugaku also realized how similar his speech pattern was to Minato, and internally growled. He always hated Minato due to how smooth he was. He also hated how much Mikoto liked him when they were younger. Looks like I had the last, you blonde fool, Fugaku angrily thought. No matter, I'm sure that if my Itachi and you were to fight, he would come out on top. Isn't that right, Itachi? Fugaku crossed his arms across his chest and smirked at the boy. Itachi looked at Naruto and quickly flashed him his Sharingan. To his surprise, Naruto flashed his eyes so fast that only Itachi was able to see it since he was looking right at his face. Blonde hair, blue eyes, whiskers, Sharingan? He's Minato's son. Oh man, sure Sway is gonna flip when he finds out. Wait, that's where Mom is all the time. She's probably with Naruto since she and Minato were so close. Itachi thought to himself as he gazed at Naruto, who looked back. I don't want to fight him if he is not an enemy, Itachi stated as he turned his gaze to his food. I agree, Naruto smiled and walked over to the chair next to Itachi. He then sat and held out his hand for the child to shake. I'm Naruto, he said with a smile on his face. I'm Itachi, it's nice to meet you, Naruto-kun. Itachi let a smile grace his features as he shook the boy's hand, much to the ire of Fugaku. Sasuke also pouted since he knew that his dad wasn't happy either. When Mikoto walked out with trays of food, she saw Naruto and Itachi smiling at each other and talking. Her heart swelled as she walked around handing breakfast to everyone. When she passed both the boys, she smiled at them and they smiled back. However, Fugaku noticed this, and when she passed him, he spanked her. If you have time to smile at that brat, you have time to please me. He bellowed, which made Naruto's ki subconsciously rise. It was lowered by a look from Mikoto. He took a deep breath and started to eat his food. After he was about halfway through eating his food, Naruto saw Sasuke glaring at him. He glared back and continued to eat his food. Sasuke then knocked over his cut and cried, "To-san! He threw food at me." Naruto looked up and glared at the child. I didn't throw anything at him. Naruto looked at Itachi, who also nodded his head. Naruto was eating the entire time. He did not throw anything at Sasuke. Itachi spoke in his even tone. Why would Sasuke have any reason to lie? Fugaku asked Naruto, who glared at the man. Because everything on this plate has syrup on it. Meaning that if I flung it, syrup would be on the table. As you can see, there isn't any syrup on the table. However, at Sasuke's side of the table, a clear trail of syrup from his plate to his cup is visible. Therefore I did nothing and it was Sasuke the entire time, Naruto explained casually to everyone who was at the table. Mikoto was absolutely beaming at his deductive reasoning and at how fast he was able to figure out and explain something like this so quickly. She looked at Naruto and smiled at him. Even Mito and Akari were praising him at his comeback to Fugaku. Fugaku was glaring daggers at Naruto but relented because even he knew he couldn't argue with that sound of logic. Women, clean this up. Yes, Fugaku-sama. Mikoto submissively stood up, bowed, and went to go clean up Sasuke's mess. Fugaku watched her clean and frowned. That uniform isn't nearly as dirty as it should be. Meaning that you haven't been wearing it around the house as often. This also goes along with some of the men that I have randomly check in on you while I'm at work. Last time I checked I did not permit you to go outside the clan district. So, where are you going? He asked his wife, who suddenly stopped moving. She looked at her husband and took a deep breath. I have been going to train recently. I felt that since my duties were still getting done, I could go train with some of my free time. Mikoto effortlessly lied to her husband, who balled up his fist. I did not permit you to train, you ungrateful bitch! He shouted at her. Naruto was doing everything he possibly could to keep himself from letting his ki rip at the man. Itachi also was not happy at what his father was saying and balled up his fist. Yatu-san! Put her in her place! Sasuke childishly shouted, which made Mikoto glare at him. When he saw her glaring at him, Sasuke ideally shut his mouth. As of right now, you will not be permitted to leave this house unless summoned by the Hokage. You will not be allowed to train, nor will you be allowed to see any of your friends. If you do need to go out of the house, you will be accompanied by a member of the police force who will report directly to me. And just to make any training you that more difficult, you will need to lose that oh so glorious figure you have. Try training when you are out of shape. Now get back to cleaning! He roared at his wife, who was on the verge of tears. She schooled her emotions and bowed. Bachan, Kachan, what does he mean? Naruto asked an irate Mito and Akari. The latter was so angry that she had to leave the house to blow off steam. Well, she now has to get fat so that she can't train. It's a way that some Uchihas have kept control over their wives. Especially women who are as powerful as Mikoto. It's truly disgusting. Tobirama was right, a good Uchiha is a dead one. She angrily spat, which made Naruto furious. He was so mad that he was leaking a rather uncomfortable amount of ki. Fugaku noticed this and glared at him. It seems you are finished eating your food. You can leave now, he shouted. Naruto angrily bowed and left the room. While walking, he found Mikoto in the hallway. He sprinted to her and hugged her. I'm sorry, Mikoto-ka-chan. I'm so sorry, he cried into her. She comforted the small child in her arms and rocked him back and forth. It's okay, Naruto, you didn't do anything wrong. Don't worry, I'll get through this. I always have and I always will, she whispered into his ear, and she hugged him tightly. Don't worry, I'll get you out of here. I promise. He looked into her eyes. What she saw was a small boy who was ready to go through hell for her. She saw Minato in front of her. Mikoto was so moved by the determination he was showing that she shed a tear. I know you will, Sochi, she whispered into his ear as she hugged him tightly. I know you will. What if Uzumaki clan finds Naruto Council bashing harem part 2? And thanks for watching my video till the end. If you enjoy this content, then do consider subscribing to my channel, and leave a like if you guys need the next part. Comment down, and thanks for watching the video, and see you guys in the next video.